What's happening, everybody? Welcome to the lab. I'm your host, Joshua Diaz. Good to see you be here. Thank you for joining us on this Sunday evening. We got one of our favorites in the house, one of my favorites, a friend of mine, Dr. Gary Brucato, forensic psychologist, and author of The New Evil. And if you have not picked that up, you should definitely check it out. Now that it's off for the Christmas, we don't have to worry about people buying it for Christmas now as a stocking stuffer. So I don't know if that happened or not, but it's possible. It's possible. Can you imagine, like, hey, here you go. I got you this for Christmas. And the person's like, I love it. True love,
Each his own.
How are you tonight?
Good. A couple of things I want to say outright before we even get started, because I've been reading the comments here.
Yep.
And, one of the things, I notice you say Milwaukee monster, right? Which is one of the things that Dahmer was called. And certainly from a moral perspective, I can understand someone using words like that. For goodness sake, I co-wrote a book about evil. But it is important to understand that, we don't need to go to the preternatural or anything like that to understand the horrors of somebody like this. We simply need to go to the realm of human behavior, aberrant sexual desires, weird ways that people deal with object constancy problems and things like that to understand this guy, this serial killer who had strange paraphilic disorders. And I think that thing of sort of saying, like, why would you want to talk about this terrible person? Well, to understand him, I'm a clinician. I'm interested in understanding these people so that we could prevent more of them. I don't think it's a good idea to just sort of dismiss someone because of the horrors of what they did and say, you're wrong to talk about them. We're not talking about him with celebration. We're talking about him to understand him. And as I said, it's not necessary to even get into the whole, he's evil, whatever. Evil, as Michael Stone and I define it, has to do with the way you feel when you look at a case, right? But we're not interested in labeling human beings evil. What they do is it might fall under that rubric. And so I think people in the audience who, for whatever reason, feel like pearl clutching, I think should just not watch.
Yeah, I agree. It's
better to do that.
Heavy topic. Right. No
question. Very strange. I think there are people in this world that are professional malcontents, and they enjoy being offended. It is a very strange phenomenon, but there are people who do that. They watch to find something to be offended by. And, this kind of person that they'll tell you that they got out of the wrong side of the bed, and you, after enough days of it, you say, move the bed away from the wall. There's another side, to get out, stop getting out of the wrong side of the bed. But that is a very annoying thing to me, because it's a pseudo sensitivity that kind of bothers me. Because if you're sensitive, you shouldn't be here to complain about it. Just shut it off. Leave.
Yeah, it's like one of those things.
Doesn't that bother you too? The pseudo pearl clutching.
Of course. Yeah, I always wondered why people would watch something that either offends them or disturbs them and then complain about it afterwards. I get that there is sort of, like you said, this people want to find something. Yeah, be a victim about something. But in this situation, and I'll tell you this, that first of all, on this channel, what we do is we cover true crime, and you are an authority on true crime. You have.
What do you want me to talk about? Ice cream flavors? We have to talk about people that do horrible things. Come on.
What's your favorite ice cream flavor, though?
Don't ask me that question. I haven't eaten ice cream in so long because of dietary restrictions that talking about it is cruel. So don't go there. I miss ice cream dearly.
Is it? What about cookies? Or no sweets?
No.
That's torture.
I don't want to talk about it.
He doesn't want to talk about it. I got you. But anyway, Jeffrey Dahmer, one of the most polarizing serial killers.
Transitioning from a conversation about what I eat to Jeffrey Dahmer is disturbing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We're going to offend
knowing you did that on purpose, but we'll
knowing me, would I ever do something like that?
Yes, absolutely. And you'd make it rhyme.
Well, I would try at least. Remember, poetry doesn't have to rhyme, Dr. Gary.
This is a good point. Some of the best poetry doesn't rhyme.
Yeah.
But anyway, but you have. I just want to also say, as part of the ground rules here, that now that we've discussed the pearl clutchers, oh my stars, I have the vapors. I think the next thing that I'd like to put out there is, thank you, Rocky Road guy. I appreciate that very much. That's hilarious. Okay. But I think that it's important to also emphasize why we're revisiting these serial killers from earlier times, and the reason is that revisiting them, looking at footage of them talking in their own words and so forth, is a really good educational opportunity. And I really want people to think about these people in ways that go beyond the simplistic ways that they're hearing about them in a lot of places, a lot of books, a lot of pods, a lot of television shows, whatever. They have this kind of pseudo deep way of thinking about these cases. And I think it's interesting to take them a little deeper and sort of think about how these guys, and they're almost all guys, have premises that are kind of strange, but if you understand them, you could get into the psychology of them. And as I said, you can start to understand how they are human beings. You don't have to think of them as walking around in red tights with pitchforks. They're human beings who sort of skew in a weird direction, either because of brain abnormalities or things that have happened to them, or both. And so I want to try to understand them psychologically. So that's the point of this. Instead of just talking about these cases that are unsolved and contemporary. And Dahmer, of course, is extremely interesting. But I've yet to see him treated in a deep way in most of what's online and what.
Well, what else is really fascinating about Dahmer is his relationship with his father.
Well, it's critical to the whole story.
Yeah, I mean, it really, to me, is one of the more fascinating aspects of Jeffrey Dahmer, because I know that there's a lot of people that would lay a lot of blame at the feet of his father. I'm not necessarily one, and it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on that too as we kind of move along. But I just couldn't imagine, one day finding out that your son is who Jeffrey Dahmer turned out to be.
Well, it's interesting because there was a multi-layered thing going on there. Because first, you had the discovery by family of his gay lifestyle, which they thought, in the time and setting and their particular belief system, they already thought was shocking, right? And so you have to picture somebody who was already kind of isolated, and the family discovers this thing about him that they already think is shocking, right? But little did they know that what was coming down the pike that was going to be way harder than that. Which I think is important, not even to pathologize. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think, to be perfectly frank with you, I think spiritual beliefs aside, going around having an issue with who it is that a person is drawn to in that way is very strange to me, because it's a personal choice. I don't understand the hatred of people like that, which I think we have to put out there before we talk about him, that there's no judgment on that component of his life. Would you agree with that?
What about being gay?
Right. That's
not at all.
That here.
Not at all, but
that's important, right?
A lot of it comes. He was really scrutinized. Like people would say, like, was he targeting gay men or African American men at the time? That was a whole conversation, and I don't know. I don't know that much about Milwaukee, but they'd always talked about that there was the reason that the police didn't react to a lot of this phone calls and stuff was because it was homosexual activity, and they just kind of dismissed it. So, but no, there's no. I mean, I could
But it's important that we mention that because you have to understand that what we're going to be saying is that in the family structure, that was hard for some
yes,
people in the family to deal with, but that we are not talking about that, right? That we don't share that, But I know, like for example, his grandmother, she suspected that that's what he was doing when he was bringing men home, and that was uncomfortable enough, right? So, but we need to talk about that a little bit now. But I think your finger is on the pulse of a good place to start when you start talking about the family dynamics in Dahmer, because one of the theories I have that I'm going to be presenting in my new book that I've never heard anybody talk about before, the emphasis is always on sex, that in puberty, these men, who have control issues and domination issues get sort of blended up with sexual desire in puberty, and they go out and they act that out through that means. But what I think there's an under emphasis on is using these crimes as a way of rendering the people in your life permanent and predictable. Feeling that the people around you don't love you stably and trying to find a way to make people a permanent object. And if there were ever a case that supported my hypothesis about that, it's Dahmer. And so I think your sense that we have to begin with the story of him in a family where he's feeling kind of gobbled up in the fighting between the parents who ultimately divorce and had difficulty processing emotion as it is.
Yeah, the family dynamic was very interesting, especially when he was young, and then his father, ended up with another woman, and but at the same time, I don't know that much about the father, although he did express that he had some similar interests in, I don't know, animal. I don't know. What did he do? He cut animals up, or he was interested in it too, or something like taxidermy. I think that's what it was. That he was interested in that kind of thing, which is a legitimate job. However, it could be a little difficult to stomach at times. It would take something.
Right. But it's a good place, an admirable place to start the story. Is really to talk about how, from the time that Dahmer was a boy, that Jeffrey was a boy, that's to distinguish him from the father.
Yeah.
He had a quality that some people looking at the case have thought had a developmental flavor to it. A kind of what might be called a schizoid autistic detachment. Now, let me be crystal clear that autism, the developmental condition autism, is virtually never associated with violence.
Right.
So that's not really what we're saying here. We're saying the phrase schizoid autistic detachment means when a person, from the time that they're a kid, has a kind of blunted, almost schizophrenic-like detachment from emotionality, and can do things like look at something cut up like a dissected frog and feel as if they are 30,000 feet above it with no emotional reactivity to it. When a serial killer has schizoid autistic detachment, they are kind of odd interpersonally, right? And those people, when that gets combined with all that post-pubescent sexual aggression, you wind up with a perfect storm that makes them do more than just kill people. They tend to butcher the body or look inside of it or keep parts of it or photograph it or whatever, because that detachment can look kind of like torture, when for them it's something of an experimentation or interest in the body and all that. And about 50% of serial killers, in the estimation of Michael Stone and me, are also schizoid autistic, right? They have that. Now, so let me be clear. We're not talking about autism. We're talking about that quality of flatness, detachment, intellectual curiosity, etc. And from the time that Dahmer was a little boy, Jeffrey was a little boy, he had a strange empathy problem consistent with that kind of presentation where, for example, if a boy would fall on the schoolyard, Jeffrey would just sort of stare and not feel upset or scared by that, right? And from the time he was young, he was very interested in the insides of animals. There's an incident that, I love these little anecdotes you get from people who knew killers. And there's one anecdote I heard that always horrified me, where there was a fish that was kind of being gutted open, and Dahmer was very interested in the inside of the fish, right? So you have to picture this fish open with the little skeleton and the innards and all the red gore of it and whatever. And Dahmer is sort of staring at it, and the friend is standing with him, and he gets this goofy, creepy, wide-eyed smile on his face, and he says, "Look at it," like that, right? Now, I think that's a very interesting story, and so that and then there were tales. Lord knows how apocryphal some of these stories are, but there are stories like about him being interested in dogs, flaying dogs, possibly nailing a dog to a tree. There was one story told about him that he took a crow and put it inside a box and liked listening to it squawk until the squawk became a wee sound and it died inside the box. There was this interest in having control over what lives and dies, what stays and what goes, right? Which I would put to you is the beginning of the process of trying to take control over things leaving him, over whether things come or go. And we're going to see in adulthood that transforms into, maybe I'll make you into a zombie. Maybe I'll eat you and you'll be a permanent part of myself, right? So that he becomes obsessed in that literal way that a schizoid autistic person might, right? For example, if you or I loved a person, we might say, I could just gobble you up, but we don't mean it literally. We don't mean it literally, right?
Sure.
Or a religious person might have the construct
I've
of
never
the
said
Eucharist.
that to anybody.
Right. You think of the construct of the Eucharist in Catholicism, where you eat Jesus and he becomes part of you, right? That spiritual construct, right? So that this kind of weird perversion of that idea of rendering someone permanent by eating them is going to be central to him. But he starts out like that, and as we'll see, as we're going to listen to some interviews, it's going to culminate in an incident where he has a sexual encounter with a hitchhiker. And the hitchhiker dares to try to leave, and he kills him with a dumbbell. And then it's 9 years until he kills again. But that inaugural incident where he transitions to killing a human is all about somebody trying to leave him. And also we can talk a little bit about how he would pick men up and the lines he would use to probe for whether that person was someone that had loved ones and knew what loss was, and etc. And we'll talk about that too. So what do you want to do? You want to watch
Yeah, we can bring up it's the Jeffrey Dahmer tapes, and this is a 14-minute clip, and we can stop it along the way for commentary. And if you have a point that you'd like to make, just let me know, and we'll do that.
To answer Kate's question, yes, indeed, he ate parts of people. He did indeed, and that's one of the most infamous facts about Jeffrey Dahmer, was the retention of body parts, some of which were cannibalized, some of which were dissolved in acid, some of which were pulverized with sledgehammer, etc. But some was eaten, yes.
And another aspect is that I also wanted to talk about Tracy Edwards at some point as well, the victim that escaped from his apartment and was ultimately ended up being taken back to the apartment. And I always found his testimony at trial, especially the first 10 minutes of it, just absolutely gut wrenching. From
about what the family gives him.
When he just gets up there and kind of just lays out what happened the first 10-15 minutes. And Tracy Edwards actually is serving a life term in prison now for murder himself.
Right.
And God knows, where it went off the rails for him, for the things that he had to endure.
Right. Well, the very interesting thing about Dahmer is that because he had that capacity to detach from himself and fly like a plane above himself and look down, he could speak objectively about himself, and he was, in this really strange way, capable of a scintilla of remorse. But the thing is, whatever was going on with him, there was a psychopathic core.
Sure.
But he did have that ability to kind of intellectualize himself and talk about what he did and how he shouldn't have done it and all of this. The problem is you also hear stories that after he would express remorse, the people that needed to hear that would turn their heads and he would make mocking faces at the other prisoners or kind of be boastful or whatever, so that one wonders how true that was. And of course, he ultimately gets killed in jail, in prison by another prisoner. So you have to wonder. But anyways,
what was his sentence?
I have to look off the top of my head, but I think it was like endless. No. I think it was a lot of life sentences. But let me look it up. I have it here.
I was very curious, and
I have it. Yeah.
He was pretty young too. I think what is
got? I'm going off the top of my head. I think he got multiple life sentences, but I gotta look. I think it was like 15 life sentences or something.
That's a lot.
Yeah, here we go. Yeah, I don't know how I remembered that. Sentenced to 15 terms of life imprisonment in 1992. But then later, I think they sentenced him to life for a 16th. So he was, he was ultimately, and he also had served time for a sex offense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
against a youth.
Yeah, he would have had to die 15 times before he got out. But yeah, so we're gonna listen to this here, and whenever you want me to stop it, just let me know. And
I'll give you a little finger wave or something.
A little ding. I'll give you a bell on Jeopardy.
This is okay, Jeff. I mean, don't be embarrassed by this. Am I making you feel uncomfortable?
No. It has to be faced, so it's just so bizarre, isn't it?
It's not easy to talk about. It's something that I've kept buried within myself for many years, and it's like trying to pull up a 2-ton stone out of a well.
Okay, Jeff. Tell me what you were thinking.
I wondered why I was compelled to do the murders. What I was searching for that would fill the emptiness that I felt. The murdering someone and disposing of them right away gives no great lasting pleasure or feeling of fulfillment. And yet I still felt the compulsion to do it throughout these years.
If you want to pause a second.
I didn't seem to have.
So already what the audience should be hearing is the way that he is distancing himself from blame. We hear that in the referral to himself as being compelled to do what he did, as if something made him do this. He was a slave to it or something. So the compulsion idea. And then, of course, we have the idea of him claiming that he very rapidly killed them, that there wasn't much to it. He would detain and kill them. He's leaving out all the horrors that would have occurred between the abduction and the killing, which would have been anything from drilling holes in their head to pour acid in, to basically lobotomize them, to turn them into subservient zombies, strangulation, leaning down and listening to their heart and getting aroused by it, potentially removing parts of the body, photographing them, eating parts of the body, retaining parts of the body, sometimes in the freezer. These are all things that are being left out to make it sound like some kind of rapid fire thing. I abduct somebody, I kill them. So that you see that minimization and you see that externalization as if it's he was compelled to, the devil made me do it, right? And he's talking as if he's interested in himself. I want you to help me understand the science of why I did this. And that is exactly the kind of thing that, I'm talking about when I say that we don't have to go to the realm of the spiritual to understand these things. If you wanted to know what made him do this, all you have to do is look inside of him. And he did it because he wanted to. I mean, that was the end of it. There was nothing else to it. He wanted to do it because it was arousing to him sexually and because it gave him a feeling of power, control, predictability in his relationships. And he liked the idea of walking around undetected with this big secret.
where does his alcoholism fit into this, or does it? Is that,
Well,
I mean, because I think a lot of the time, you know, and you know, he'll tell you that, you know, he drank beer and he enjoyed drinking and that he was an alcoholic. You know, this is just my personal opinion, but to me, it kind of reminds me of Alex Murdoch, where he's saying, you know, I was a pill addict, I did this, and I think a lot of that is kind of a built-in excuse. Sometimes I don't know about Jeffrey Dahmer, maybe it is, but I always felt like that with Alex. Is there some of that there?
Well, it's an interesting point. I mean, remember that Dahmer was drinking from a very young age. I mean, he would bring cups and bottles and things to school that had alcohol in them, even from his youth, which is certainly a sign that something is up in one's house, or, you know, that there's some disturbance going on emotionally, right? And but the idea is, I think alcohol probably had a disinhibiting effect on him. And I agree with you that sometimes people use that as a way of saying the devil made me do it, you know, that kind of a thing. Some of them intentionally drink to loosen themselves up. I think alcohol played a major role in his MO, because when he would go to gay bars to try to pick up potential victims, he would drink with them. And the idea was to ask them questions to try to get a flavor for if they had experienced abandonment, if they were runaways, if they were whatever. That had a double meaning. I think I've heard people comment on, like in reporters and things, talk about how that was a way of figuring out if people were going to be missed, if they were going to, if they died, if anybody would know, you know, that they were out of the picture. But I think it was also a way of finding out how much he could identify with them and connect with them and use that as a hook to pull them in. And you know, the other thing is, of course, he was slipping people benzodiazepines to knock them out, and of course, you had to do that in drinks. And so I think alcohol, you know, and remember again that whole theme of like, I'm putting something into you, some edible, or, you know, in something that you imbibe into you, is a theme with him: food, drink, whatever, right? And so that construct of like, I have intimacy with you because we share a drink.
Yeah, and it was also a way of him to roofie people.
Yeah, right. And
that's what he did with Tracy Edwards. He offered him a cocktail with, I don't know what kind of sedative he put in it or whatever. I can't remember, but the point was, you know, he would lure people, you know, back to his apartment under the guise of money and alcohol a lot of the times. And then it would just go sort of
go south. And that's where the gay aspect comes in, because at the time, the secretiveness of the gay community and the idea that there were many people in it that were runaways or people that had been abandoned by family and so forth, it created this pool in which it was a little easier to go hunting. And you have to understand that we wouldn't understand that as well in certain parts of the country or world.
He did.
Right.
It was a predator. All right.
It was certainly a predator. And what I would put to you is that every single time somebody got brought home that he was attracted to, what you had was this miniature reenactment of that dynamic of, I get to like you, we create intimacy, we share a space, you want to go home, I take power over you and you're not allowed to leave, and you become part of me forever and ever and ever, and I could look at pictures of you anytime I want, and I could eat you, and I could keep you forever. And that he needed to keep playing that fantasy out. And it got so bizarre after a while that he ultimately decided he even wanted to have an altar where the skulls or skeletons of some of these people were just looking at him at all times and were, you know, present with him. So you want to understand that the idea was to have a totally passive individual, whether they were drugged or dead, that he could have relations with and use like a marionette. That's the whole idea, right? And
Rusty, I believe his mother did some mental health struggles. I think that there was pretty well documented, wasn't it?
Well, you know, his it's a little complicated. I think there was some question of depression and a little bit of like she was like something of a hypochondriac, and I think there was even a suicide attempt at some point, if I remember correctly. The audience can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
But there was this idea that she was kind of arguing all the time with the husband, and there was no attention being given to this child. Other people say he was totally smothered with attention. So it all depends who you ask. Yeah. But the idea is it certainly would have created a totally unpredictable environment for him. So let's go back to the interview.
The normal feelings of empathy.
Did you ever consciously think to yourself, geez, why don't I have these feelings that normal people would have?
I did wonder about it. It started with fantasizing. It always started with fantasizing.
And right there, he said that he always struggled with empathy.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Eventually, it seemed the fantasies came to be what triggered it all. I wish I could give you a good, straightforward answer on that.
Right. Now, again, let's just pause a minute, because I like teaching, and I don't want people to miss these little juicy points, that we can make. So notice he uses the word empathy. Now, those who are familiar with my work may have heard somewhere or read somewhere that I have a problem with the misuse of the word empathy. There is a difference between empathy and compassion. Empathy means, can you read the feelings of other people on their face? Compassion means, do you give a flying leap about what they feel, right? So most serial killers can empathize. If they couldn't empathize, they wouldn't be able to get you to go home with them. They have to use their ability to feel what you're feeling against you, but then they don't care, right? So you have to picture this guy listening intently while somebody's talking about being a runaway or losing their family or whatever, being rejected by the family, and looking like he cares, and then bringing them home. It's like a kind of a grooming situation. You bring them home, then you show no compassion whatsoever, so that the empathy is actually used as a technique, like a spider, to lure a person into the trap. And then and so that's very, very important to understand, because otherwise you wind up with people thinking that these serial killers lack empathy, and that's not true. If they lacked empathy, they would be like those bizarre offenders that have to just like open the door and snatch someone because they can't talk somebody into an isolated area or whatever. They don't have any social skills. But most of these guys do have. Now, if he was truly one of those kind of schizoid-autistic types, as some people say, then he might have been weird in that way. But we know that he was able to lure people. As a matter of fact, there are many people who find Jeffrey Dahmer quite attractive, even now. There are whole worlds of people that have this strange hybristophilic attraction to him, like we also see going on right now with the accused CEO shooter, Luigi Mangione. We see that with Kohlberger, the accused in the Idaho case. We certainly saw that with Ted Bundy. We certainly saw that. There is a world of people who are attracted to Dahmer in that way. He doesn't have that off-putting quality that you would see in some of these creepier, like, Willie Picton or something, where, the pig farmer, that's killing prostitutes and eats them. He was weird to look at. Ed Gein, this is somebody that people thought was attractive. And, you know what I'm saying? So that's important to understand, because that gives you a clue that he was able to approach people. I'm not really sure that I would say he lacked empathy, but he liked saying that he lacked empathy. But he meant that he couldn't care less. He had no compassion.
And for anybody that's going, I find him disgusting, you have to go back before you knew what he was doing and what he was.
He wasn't a horrible looking guy. I mean, listen, that's for people to decide. I couldn't care less. But I'm just saying that there are people who do say that about him. And that's important to understand.
He certainly was. He wasn't a heinous looking fella, that's for sure.
Area that is to really blame is my own twisted thinking. I haven't been thinking normally for years.
What was the problem there as you were growing up between your mom and your dad?
So this is the going into the mom and dad situation.
Right.
They just couldn't seem to get along, especially on my mom's side.
Any violence?
Just the slapping and hitting.
Who was hitting who?
Mom hitting Dad.
Whose side were you on?
I was trying not to be on anyone's side.
When did your parents separate?
When I was 18, in 1978, Mom and Dad, they had their problems. There was nothing I could do to change the situation, so I just tried to find some happiness my own way, which was obviously the wrong way.
How long had you known at that point that you were homosexual?
Since I was 13, I'd say.
What did you do?
Just kissing, laying together in a treehouse. When I was about 14 or 15, and that was consensual.
When was the first time that you ever thought about doing anything like that to a person? I mean, just fantasy.
Yeah. Probably around when I was
Pause a minute.
18.
So one of the things that I think, if somebody were doing, psychotherapy with Dahmer, I mean, he's dead. I feel like it's okay to kind of speculate about this. But if somebody were doing therapy with him, one of the psychodynamic insights that they might give is that there was a preoccupation with the imagery of the woods and trees in his life. From the time that he was a child and would kill animals out there, to the sleeping in the treehouse with the friend, to taking some people out to the forest after they would, deceased or spending time. He had a preoccupation with it. And this is very interesting, of course, from the Freudian, Jungian perspective, when we think about the woods as being a private place that sometimes, like in fairy tales, represents the unconscious or even the shadow, that kind of dark part of the self that one doesn't know or understand. And I think from the time he was a little boy, there was a kind of a safety in going out there, a privacy and a safety in the shadows of those trees out there in the woods. And I'm not sure what it meant to him, but I just think that there was something about the quiet of it that was very attractive to him. Some serial killers that have this detached quality, like Ramirez, for example, were very drawn to places like that. For Ramirez, it was cemeteries where the dead were predictable, right? So they're not going to hurt you. So you sit with the graves. And because there was also an object constancy problem in Ramirez, who had a messed up house also. But for this guy, going out to the forest meant something. And bringing a victim into that kind of a setting is important to him. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
you want to think about that, about how that figured into things, and how for a lot of these guys, these things have weird symbolisms that are very easy to miss. And here we have this totally romanticized idea about him sitting in a treehouse in this idealized way with somebody who cares about him and feeling good about it and talking about it as being consensual. And so these are the pleasant times, right, where he's experiencing something different than what's in the house. So in the house, you've got chaos, and out in the woods, in the treehouse, you've got happiness and harmony and home. Right. So just think about that. Right. Think about that psychoanalytically. And this is the kind of thing I hope people find interesting when we're dissecting these interviews, because I don't think people necessarily think this way. And I think it brings these cases to life a little bit more.
Yeah, and Lori wants to know, he comes off very honest, and somebody was asking. I think that he's being as honest as he can. I would not expect him to understand everything that's wrong with him. But he's the only one that can give you the insight of why he felt this way or why he would do what he was doing. A lot of times, like Dr. Gary said, they kind of try and sometimes put a little spin on it, either to, because they're already dejected from reality.
Yeah, but he was lonely, and now he's got people paying attention to him.
Absolutely.
What you have to understand is that now he can captivate you by being honest and telling you the terrible things about himself. Yeah, and think about somebody who was a man of secrets, first about his sexuality, and then also about alcoholism, and then also about some of his perversions. You talk about somebody who can now openly discuss them and have people sit there with their mouth agape and their eyes, wide, fascinated by him. And so you have the undoing of years of feeling ashamed. of himself, and feeling that these people just think he's absolutely fascinating, you know. And incidentally, speaking of the keeping people around by eating, it is interesting what he did for a living. You know, working in the candy factory, and also, right. So the whole idea is that figures into. In fact, I'm shocked that when they interviewed him, they didn't have the insight to bring food. If I was interviewing Jeffrey Dahmer, I would have brought food because it would have unified us in his mind. It would have made him open up. I don't know why they didn't do that. Probably they weren't allowed to, but bringing food would have had an enormous significance for him.
It's interesting.
Sure.
Yeah, he was living at the hotel, so I was pretty much by myself for a couple months.
During the time your father was at the hotel, how many times a day would you speak with him?
Oh, maybe once or twice a week.
So the day she left and went to Chippewa Falls, you never talked to her again?
Right.
How did it make you feel at that time?
Depressed, lonely, and bored, and confused, I'd say. No one was at home. I saw this guy hitchhiking. I thought it would be nice to have someone around to talk with, and someone that I wanted to be with for sex. That's what attracted me. The physique.
And as this kind of goes along, he constantly bringing up the loneliness by himself, lonely, somebody to talk to, lonely, somebody to talk to. I just wanted somebody to talk to.
Just the muscle.
And then as the story progresses, it gets more possessive and more, you're not going to leave me type situation. It starts off very, and I, you know, a lot of that could be from, you know, he's talking about feeling abandoned by his mother, and, you know, God knows that can do a lot of psychological damage to you. Maybe not.
Well, if he didn't do things that out of this peculiar need to control people that essentially constituted torture, whether it was because of sadism or experimentation or whatever he was doing, then he would have been essentially a narcissistic killer, where the idea is that you become one with the person who possessed them and make use of them like an object. This is why, for example, Armin Meiwes, the narcissistic cannibal, described as narcissistic, Armin Meiwes in The New Evil, has very low ranking. He's only at category 7. Because there was no sadistic element. He even gave pain-killing medication to the victim. He wasn't interested in torturing him. He just wanted to eat him to make him a permanent object. And because that's a common theme in cannibals, right? I want to make you a permanent part of myself so you can't leave. Because in Meiwes' case, his mother had died of cancer, and he was also a gay man that had a lot of shame around that and was, you know, isolated and insecure. And so he had these dalliances with men, you know, that he met in bars and things, but he wanted a more permanent object. And you know, and so if you took the torture element off the table, Dahmer would probably be much lower on the scale, you know, because the motivation was predominantly narcissistic. But then when we start realizing that there was a torture element, he has to shoot all the way up to 22. Because you have the repetitive killing with the torture element, but the essence of him is much more narcissistic in tone.
That's the motivation.
If you hadn't done anything with him, what did you?
No. I just got the sense that he wasn't interested in that at all after a while, talking with him. So I don't believe I asked him, no.
Okay.
It was the first time, and I did have the desire for control, the lustful feelings. So I guess I just decided to do it, whether he was gay or not. It didn't really matter. I don't know exactly why I hadn't, except I wanted to stay with him longer. I thought how amazing it was that I was actually doing it to another human being. It shocked me that I got to that point. And there was a feeling of excitement, control, but mingled with a lot of fear.
What did you do with his body?
Nothing. Just laid under the
in the crawl space area.
Did you go down and look at him at all?
I did, yeah, once, but just looked at him.
What was going through your mind as you were crouched down looking at him?
A sort of morbid curiosity as to what a dead person looked like. Curiosity mixed with a lot of fear.
Now, if you pause
I
that,
started dismembering.
pause that. So you have to imagine a person that has this interest in what a person looks like under the skin, right? What's really inside of you, right? Literally, not figuratively, but literally inside of you. And then you have a person who tells you that to get rid of this body, where does he put it? What did he tell you that he did with it?
Which one?
This one. What does he say he did with it?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't hear. In the trunk?
You didn't hear him talking about the crawl space?
Oh, no, I didn't actually.
Right. Now, he ultimately pulverizes, I understand it, pulverizes the bones and then like does like an acid, getting rid of it. But it's in the crawl space at one point, and that's important because the crawl space, again, you have that theme of wood and what's under that theme of what's under the surface, right? So you have the house where everybody's arguing, whatever, and then the crawl space, the truth of what's underneath it. It actually reminds me a little bit of David Lynch, who just passed away, the great director David Lynch, whom I love dearly. And if you remember, those of you who are fans of his movie, the movie Blue Velvet, which has a very great psychopath character in it, played by Dennis Hopper. The movie begins with this idyllic, house and this, that, and then the camera pans down beneath the lawn, and you see these insects that are like devouring each other horribly under the dirt. So there's like this guy like watering the lawn, and everything looks beautiful and idyllic, and then we see the truth underneath, right? Well, that's kind of what you want to imagine is that the symbolism of having something in the crawl space. We also saw that in Gacy, right? The idea being you had a gay man who was a closeted guy, right? Who had what was essentially a dirty secret, that he felt he had a dirty secret from the family, whatever. So it's right under the nose with the scent coming out and him having to say it's the sewer backing up.
Right.
The scent of the bodies. So what's the symbolism of it? The symbolism is that a person who is fragmented has a secret wish that the people in one part of his life will be integrated with the other part of his life. So by bringing them close together, it's toying with that. If somebody would just look in the basement, they'd know what I really am. They would just take the skin off the fish. They would see what's really inside of it. If they would just go into the woods next to the house, they'd know what's that kind of thing. So it's that idea, and we see that in a lot of killers. For example, when Gary Ridgway went into his Bible phase with, I think it was the second wife. He was very religious and not interested in killing, supposedly. Well, one time he killed a prostitute out by the thicket, near the river, and she's got like pebbles inserted in the whole thing, and she's festering. And he takes the wife out to the field to make love a few feet away from where the body is. Now, why does he do that? Because symbolically, he wants to bridge the two fragmented parts of the self. If you could see what I really am and love me, or maybe you'd fear me, or I'd have. So you want to understand that with this guy, that splitting of the self and the symbolism of stuffing this in the crawl space and then wanting to dissolve it completely, wishing that you could undo it like someone with OCD might do. Completely undo it, get rid of the bones, acid, use acid, wipe it away, take it off. And that speaks to the shame of what was in that dark place, right?
Yeah, and that's another thing that I always find fascinating is, like people will say, well, he's crazy, he was this, he was that, and I don't know, I don't really, none of those are technical terms, but the fact of the matter is he knew what he was doing was wrong because he was trying to hide every step of the way.
Yes, right. He was not mentally ill in the sense of not knowing the difference between right and wrong, but he had premises that were very literal, very concrete, very peculiar. They were attempts at resolving a long-standing problem of people not being permanent. And unfortunately, the things that he chose to do were against the law and were outrageous and were terrible, and therefore, they were unacceptable. But there are other things that people do out in the world in relationships to try to keep people around that are horrendous, but they don't involve murder. But there are people in this audience that have been in relationships with people that have kept them crippled emotionally to keep them around, have broken their self-esteem, have talked down to them, have become involved with somebody who was emotionally vulnerable so that they could become the savior of that person and the person will never leave them, have used financial dependency to keep the person trapped. We've all done that, been in those situations, or people, some here may have done those things out of a kind of a sad attempt to keep someone around. And this is like, take that and push it all the way into the total absence of giving a flying leap that you're hurting another human being. But the principle is the same. I don't want you going anywhere. You're mine.
Yeah.
Right? That kind of thing. And so trust me, anyone in this audience that has been involved with somebody with a narcissistic or psychopathic core knows they may not go as far as this, but they know what it is to have the legs broken out from under them emotionally. So the person would never.
There's a human element of not wanting to be abandoned, not wanting to be alone. There is a sector of the world of people that do enjoy being alone for the most part. But I mean, complete isolation from everybody is detrimental. I mean, you have to engage with people, and it's deep down, it's just human nature to not want to be rejected.
That's right. I mean, I'm a person that's very introverted, and I find people very taxing if I'm around them too much. I find them very draining, to be honest with you, because most of what people are interested in, I have no interest in. It just doesn't interest me at all. Nothing, none of it. But the thing is, some of what they're interested in I could get into, but it gets very deep, and I can't do small talk. You know what I mean? You don't want to get stuck next to me on a bus. But the thing is, I think that.
Well, it's funny that you said
but the thing is that I love it sometimes. Like, in other words, when I have the joy of going out with some people that purposely distract me, and do something totally stupid, that, in the weird way, is one of the great joys of life, right? Well, and so, that's the whole thing. It's like you escape yourself.
You're one of the only people that I know that when I have a conversation with you, just in general off the air, and you said it earlier a little bit, and it was kind of in jest, but you will just straight up tell me, I don't want to talk about it. And, sometimes I'll push the issue and I'll go, well, why? I don't want to talk about it. You sure? I don't want to talk about it. And which is, fine. I don't care about that. I just think you're completely right that, it's just like you do have that, and then something will catch your eye or catch your ear.
And I'll talk about it endlessly. Yes, correct. Exactly. Correct. Because I am very interested in, I have two things going on. I definitely am observant and like to talk about a thing like that most people don't notice, right? I'm very interested in what you could build up from a very tiny observation. Right. But I'm also very interested in applying that way of thinking to the unconscious, to spiritual things, to feelings, to internal, so that I can equally do that about somebody's feelings or my own feelings or whatever. So it's very tiring, very tiring. So I put up walls and boundaries, or my battery will get drained. I think that's the complete opposite of what you're talking about with Dahmer. I think Dahmer, there was no real interest in the feelings of other people. It was a very selfish thing, but he just wanted somebody there, to sit there like a object in the room, to just kind of feel like there was something there, right? I always thought that's why he liked to listen to heartbeats. I can't tell you how many patients, for example, over the years I've talked to, or people I've talked to, I'll say, why did you get a cat? And they say, I just like the sound of its heartbeat in the house.
Right.
Right. It's just the idea that there's a living, predictable being in the house. Right. But they couldn't care less about having a conversation. I mean, yeah, some people talk to their cats and dogs, but that they just want a predictable object. It's not like you're sitting there going, so tell me about your childhood, so and so. where you have to really open up and be deep and whatever. So you want to understand, like, sometimes the predictability is more important than the relationship. And if you take that to an extreme, you wind up with somebody like Dahmer, who basically will be very happy even with a corpse. The corpse is there. You do what I want you to do. You're predictable, right? They don't even have to talk. And so you have to picture that kind of extreme idea of just wanting a predictable object over wanting happiness. And you see that in some people I have found over the years, some people who stay in terrible relationships. It's because the person that's terrible to them is at least predictable. You always know where you stand. They won't love you. They'll treat you like crap, but you always know where you stand with them.
Sure.
But with someone who loves you, they could stop loving you. It's unpredictable. So they choose the predictability of the bad relationship over the happiness of the one that might scare them. See? And so you want to understand that predictability is key to getting this guy. And framing it that way makes him more of a human. Makes him more of a human. That went a little haywire, but he's a human in the center of him. See? And don't you think that's important to understand that?
Certainly do, and like you said, at his core, yes, he is a human being, and I think that's what makes him so fascinating. And when I say fascinating, you can interpret that however you want, but the fascination with him is, I can't believe that there are people out here that do this kind of stuff, and then that's why true crime is what it is. And people go, wow, I cannot believe that there are people out here that would do this, because it's so unfathomable to do. And like you said earlier, there are people that you don't want people to walk out of your life that you love or feel like you need. But then sometimes there are people that are manipulated to stay in a situation, but that's what this is, times 1,000.
Times 1,000. And just to be clear, because there's always going to be people, as I said, pearl clutchers. There's always going to be people that are going to misinterpret what I say. So let me clarify something. Most people who have pets have them because they truly love them. I'm talking about some people have them because they need a predictable object in their life. Not all, right? So there's no need for people to say, what are you talking about? I actually love my dog. Of course, obviously. We're talking about pathology. We're not talking about, right, of course. I love pets more than you have any idea.
It goes up and down. It's kind of like a buoy, the love that I have, especially for Otis, because he completely ripped up another pair of my underwear today.
Did he?
Yeah. And I had
beneath the surface, you should be happy.
He was headed to the crawl space to take some acid to it or something. I don't know.
There's something about calling that the crawl space that I may throw up, but I appreciate it.
Right. Yeah. But this is how that conversation goes. Give it back. And then he runs. And I said, get over here. And then he keeps running. So,
Oh, and by the way, to the audience member that just said they're a Seinfeld junkie, me too. There isn't a line I don't know.
Same here.
And I've even visited sites associated with the show, eaten at the diner, drove past the Costanza's house where it's located, where the front of the I'm nuts about that show because I love the absurdity of it.
It's fantastic and so cleverly written.
Yeah, I think I have a little Jason Alexander inside of me somewhere, like in my soul, who, a little bit of him just comes out every once in a while and explodes,
Not talk about it anymore.
Yeah. Don't you have a little bit of him in you?
Well, I've been, my cousins actually used to call me Costanza whenever I'd have a freak out.
Well, which Costanza? Do you mean the father or the son?
Both.
Yeah, because I think I got a little bit of the father in me. He is. I think he may be one of the funniest people who ever lived.
That conversation when they're talking about the bras when he was going to become a bra salesman was
the man's ear.
That was just one of the funniest things I'd ever seen. All right, let's pick it up.
There are some that I just can't anyway, but it's yeah. Anyway.
There's something I remember cutting the legs off and then the arms.
Well, I mean, what a great transition that was, huh?
Did you touch anything?
I probably did. Liver, heart.
Did it concern you at all as to why you felt such satisfaction at that time when you were 18 years old by using him to masturbate?
I'm not sure I even know why now. I got an exciting feeling out of doing that. But I did.
How long did you keep in the house with him?
Well, about 6 hours.
After that, you said you went to Ohio State?
For about 3 months. Did a lot of drinking there, so grades weren't very good. They sent me to basic training, then field medic training. I was drinking heavily near the end.
It is amazing how he could go these long stretches, though, because it was all crimes of opportunity, right? I mean, that was, when he was kind of left to his own devices, he would really, he would hunt.
Well, it's interesting. When Stephen King created Pennywise for It, he very much, I think, based Pennywise on John Wayne Gacy, right? I always thought that. And because of the clown, dressing as a clown to lure children and all that. And in It, there is this idea that the creature is dormant for I think it's 27 years between periods of killing. So there's this idea of a cooling off period, which is so central to the idea of serial killing, right? So is this idea that like there's a kill and then a period of kind of savoring it or it being enough or laying low and then sort of planning and plotting and fantasizing and then going out and doing it again. And the definition of a cooling off period is very confusing, right? Because it's never, as far as I know, ever really been officially defined.
Sure.
I think I personally, have said a month. In the mass murder work I've done with my colleagues from when I was at Columbia, I think we said that anything more than a week could be considered a cooling off period. But it's tricky. But for Dahmer, there were long patches. I mean, you're talking about, I think the first murder is in 1978, and I think it's 9 years, if I remember correctly, till he kills again. And then they're very spread out, right? So it tells you something about how he is one of those people whose pattern was that he would sort of do it and then like savor it. He had photos, he kept trophies, he whatever, and then it would be a while before he needed to kind of do it again. And but there are other serial killers that there's virtually no pause. They're closer to spree killers. They just go on a frenzy, like Ramirez. Ramirez had a very spree killer-like quality, just going place to place to place. I mean, he's technically a serial killer, but he had that quality.
Was it like a 20-something month span where he would that was all he was about?
Ramirez, right? He would like a drug-fueled, running all over the place, increasing frenzy. This is more like a guy that had these breaks. Another person like that is the accused Rex Heuermann, right? Where people say, how could, what was he doing for all these years? Well, if he's guilty, he might have been killing other people, right? Or he may have had long patches where he kind of savored and revisited the dead or watched, looked at pictures or whatever, and then felt compelled to do it again. So that thing of the length of cooling off periods absolutely fascinates me, because serial killers can be very different in that regard. And Dahmer was one of those people, even though he called it a compulsion. What kind of compulsion can you go that many years between killing? A compulsion is like, I really like eating this food and I'm going to give it up by gum. And the next day you're eating it again. And when it's in your hand, you're going, tomorrow I'll give it up. Is that a compulsion when you've got years between, right? You're just calling it a compulsion. That's not a compulsion.
Yeah. So, and right here it says for Dahmer, I don't think the killing was a motivation. Now he actually says that it was a means to an end, with him. And I agree with that too. Matter of fact, he would go so far out of his way to try and keep them alive with his lobotomy, and which never worked, by the way, and was probably awesome, painful. But yeah, he would go very far out of his way to try and keep people alive until they were just in a catatonic state, basically.
But that's the reason for needing to do it again. If he had actually succeeded in keeping somebody alive forever, would he need to kill someone else? Go out and find somebody else?
No.
The whole point is that the fantasy doesn't work one time, so you have to go out and get it right the next time.
That's why he owned
So
mannequin.
all right, that's the whole point. Exactly. The mannequin is another permanent object, right? That you can manipulate in some way or whatever.
Which
that's the whole idea. It doesn't work once. You go out, and by the way, a mannequin, is not a very far cry from a corpse that's missing a head or whatever, right? I mean, they're mannequin-like, and possibly even made out of wood, which gets right back to his preoccupation with wood,
right?
Which is interesting too. Anyway, moving along. I like we're talking about this. Like they look like Edvard Munch paintings, ripping the faces off of the.
Right.
I was troubled about that.
How did it manifest itself that you were troubled by it? What were you feeling?
So I think this is where I said he put the guy in the trunk. This was the first murder. Wasn't that what? I got confused.
He's going to the rendering plant or whatever to get rid of the right.
Yeah,
when
the cop pulled him over and he talked to himself and he's like looking in the back seat or something. Great.
Indecision over whether I should confess to it. I just never had the courage to.
What were you thinking?
Well, I knew how horribly wrong it was, and how I never wanted to have anything like that ever happen again. It's difficult dredging up these feelings and motivations,
I know it's real hard. If it gets too difficult, tell me. But you realize why
talking about it and analyzing it shows me just how warped my thinking was.
Yeah.
I saw you take a dip, bite, and you dipped again.
Ever try to develop a relationship?
No, I can't say that I did.
Really?
Well, it was because of the home situation. I couldn't carry on a long-term relationship where I was staying. I had moved up and
get that off
in Wisconsin.
You know what though, Dr. Gay? You seem like a double dipper.
That's too easy. I'm not going to answer. Move on. Take that off the screen.
I'll stop right.
We want to be respectful to the.
Help my grandma out.
I don't know. I don't know who's doing the interview. They're asking. I don't know who's doing this interview.
I don't know either. Is audio from Wendy's tapes? I can look it up. Wendy Petruckus. She was.
I don't know what Kelsey's comment means. Not a fan of the show, so I'm lost.
Probably the lab.
Well,
I think
I think she's not realizing the zany humor that sometimes interferes with the communication.
I think she's talking about Seinfeld.
Oh, she's talking about Seinfeld. I thought she meant the lab.
Probably. Well, maybe that too.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine somebody not being a fan of Seinfeld.
I couldn't, I couldn't imagine that she didn't mean the lab.
Exactly right. Great having you on, Dr. Gary. Thanks for coming.
Change the way I was living, change my desires to get rid of the homosexual feelings that I had, any sinful thoughts. Started going to church with grandma on a regular basis, and tried to stifle any sexual feelings that I had. My grandma was, going to church every Sunday.
What denomination?
We'll see for her.
Protestant. I was walking around Southridge and saw this mannequin that sort of caught my eye.
Yeah.
I wanted that mannequin, so I was in the store. There's nobody in there. Stayed there until closing time.
And no alarms went off?
No, nothing. I got the mannequin undressed
got a taxi back home and stored it in the closet.
That's wild.
And,
He stayed in the store till it closed.
We got obsessed.
grass.
He absolutely did.
And I used to play around with that, dressing it up and undressing it, pretending it was real. After a week or two, Grandma happened to stumble across it. She was hanging up some clothes she'd washed for me.
She did?
Yeah, she asked me, what was it, where did I get it? And I gave her some story that I picked it up that they had extra mannequins that they were selling. I think she told my dad. So I figured I better get rid of it. Took it down to the basement and
Always down to the basement. Always something.
smashed it.
Down in the
Under the-
unconscious. Yeah, you know, it's interesting because the word mannequin it comes from the diminutive of the Dutch word for, it means like a little man, literally a little man, mannequin. And it in the I think roughly 15 to 1600s, the word meant the model that was used by artists to draw, right? Like that little wooden articulated model that an artist might use would be called a mannequin if you were a few hundred years earlier in time. And that's important to understand that is ultimately what he does with these victims. They become basically artist models that he's posing in weird positions and photographing and all that. Photography figures very heavily into the story. It is indeed, the American word does come from the French word, but the French word comes from the Dutch word. And so, but the idea is it's interesting to think about that, how photography figures in, because photography is all about savoring forever, rendering permanent, right? In fact, when photography was first invented, one of its first uses was postmortem photography, to render people who died permanent before they decayed. You could keep a picture of them. You couldn't be a Victorian without having your house filled with photographs of dead people, that you loved, and that would be posed in a very stately way, in the coffin and all that. So you want to understand that, right?
Mm.
And threw it out in the garbage. I was at the West Dallas Library, just reading a book, sitting in a chair reading a book. The last thing I expected, I just laughed it off to myself. I thought,
well, the problem with that, it is what it is that the mannequins don't talk and they don't reciprocate feelings like he wanted them to. It was kind of a placeholder. It kind of served its purpose at the time, kind of tamped it down. Think of it as somebody who's addicted to smoking cigarettes, and they use it as a nicotine patch to kind of get through the days without smoking. I mean, to simplify it in no uncertain way.
some awful, feeble attempt to get me to stumble. I never saw his face or anything.
You had such a compulsion to rest and you went to church with Emma, and it came back summer, didn't it?
That's what triggered it, I guess.
At least had a job that paid halfway decent. I could look forward to free time, privacy. Started drinking again, going to the bookstores. Found out where the gay bars were, started going to them.
What I was looking for was some live companionship, someone to spend the night with and have complete control over, and to be able to do with as I pleased. Something real instead of fake like the mannequin. That was my fantasy. Little by little, I started falling away. I just gave up trying to resist.
Do what kind of sleep control did you use?
Halcyon
Why did you get that prescription?
for trouble sleeping. I worked third shift.
that gave you that feeling of control?
If I could keep them there longer, I could just lay around with them without feeling pressure to do anything that they wanted to do. There just wouldn't be any, they wouldn't make any demands on me. I could just enjoy them the way I wanted to.
Did you think at all about how they might have felt?
Yeah, I think I did, but at that point I didn't much care. I just wanted to do what I wanted. So I didn't care.
But did any of that satisfy you? I mean, as far as really getting any true satisfaction?
I didn't have control over them. I wanted all of them, you know, and couldn't get it that way.
You totally blacked out?
Yeah.
You had no idea that you had done anything?
No, not until I woke up in the morning. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked, panicked, and very sorry that it happened because I had no intention of anything like that happening.
How did you know he was dead? Did you check his pulse?
Right, yeah. And there was blood coming out of the mouth. Apparently I had beaten him with my fists on the chest.
So how did you feel then after that time with the ambassador?
Horrified that it had started again. And how I never wanted to have anything like that ever happen again.
How did you feel on the fact that it came forth even though you were unconscious?
Confused.
Do you feel you had started to lose control?
Yeah, I knew I had done. The ambassador did something. It triggered something on me. I wanted more. I don't know what it triggered, but it triggered something. It just gave me a sick pleasure. It dominated my thoughts doing these things. Compulsion was stronger than anything else. It was a single-minded driving force. My desires were bestial, obviously.
Bestial. Yeah, you know, when you
Internalizing blame, right? Bestial.
correct. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then when and allegedly innocent, it says here, I want more. Yeah, he said that and he meant it. And just listening to it is kind of a haunting thing to hear from somebody like him.
Oh yeah.
And he got and that's what he did. Let me see.
People go to these gory horror movies to get a glimpse at what they show in the movies. The only difference is I did it for real.
So what point of time did you totally give in to these feelings altogether and not try and change anything?
After the ambassador, that really got things in full swing.
Yeah, I always kept my feelings completely to myself. And so this is a learning experience for me.
I mean, I feel as though you've been fairly open with me.
It's easier as practice.
Can you answer for me just what was it in that caused you to want to kill them?
The underlying force, I think, was obviously a warped sexual drive. Just a constant feeling of emptiness and not being able to find anything in life that really gave me a sense of happiness, peace, or fulfillment. I was always searching for something more. One night, I went out and I met this, I guess he's Indian, and he was standing there, said he was waiting for the bus.
Do you remember what his name was?
No, I don't.
Where was grandma?
She was upstairs, sound asleep. And I asked him, how late can you stay? And he said, not later than early morning. And it was already approaching early morning.
Okay. It
wanted to keep him. I guess that's the best way to describe it. My thoughts obviously weren't the thoughts of the sane person at the time.
You see it
alive, but strangling seemed to be the way.
You see the externalization of blame. I was out of my mind. I was bestial. It's a difficulty accepting that these things are part of himself. And it kind of makes you realize that all of that fragmentation, which superficially looked like it was about shame and keeping these things away from other people's eyes, were partly about not acknowledging the darkness in himself.
But
I always thought that's why some people avoid intimacy with other people. They think it's that people don't understand them. I think sometimes it's the person cannot be intimate with themselves. They're afraid that if they get close to someone is going to make them realize what they are. And so it's easier to just stay over here.
That's and that's kind of what I was thinking too. When we're asking, is he being honest? I mean, he's being as honest as he can, but at the same time, he still has to somehow justify it to himself. I'm out of my mind. I was this, I was that. I don't know if he was or he wasn't out of his mind.
No, I mean, not at all.
Yeah, he seems rather intelligent to me.
Well, all category 22 type offenders, they tend to be intelligent. I found in research that IQs are higher in torturers. And I believe that it is because torture is very much about intellectual stimulation. That's why in The New Evil, one of the points I make is that there was nobody in category 22 that I wrote about who didn't collect something. They're all collectors, right? And I'm a collector. I understand that it's a form of intellectual stimulation and control, right? You feel, so I get that. These kind of people have a perverse need for it, so they don't collect ordinary things. They collect ordinary things, but they collect other things too, right? That are perverse, right? So you find out that Robert Burdella ran a antique store, right? You find out that Gary Heidnik collected coins and paper money. You find out that John Wayne Gacy collected art. You find out that and it goes on and on and on. I can give you what they all collected. David Parker Ray collected stray objects that he turned into devices. In other words, they're collectors, and then eventually they collect other things, body parts and piles of corpses that they can visit, whatever, because it's a sense of control over the environment. And I think they also kind of identify with the things that they collect, because things that are collected are things that are not valued except by people smart enough to know their worth. So that's how they see themselves, right? Somebody would just leave me on the street because they don't know how great I am, that kind of thing. Right. So they identify with that kind of. But I think it's very, very interesting to understand this notion of that these guys are intellectually stimulated by what they do to these bodies. It's not just sexual. It's also they're bored, empty. Exactly. And if you have an emptiness of compassion, you say, how much do I need to do to this person for them to feel something and for me to feel something? It's like an experimentation, right? What happens if I do this to the body? Like, will they feel something? If I were in their shoes, would I feel something? Because all I feel is dead. What do I need to do to this person to feel something myself about them, right? So it's kind of weird experimentation with that too. Human experience, empathy, whatever. You want to think of these guys as scientists-like, just like Dahmer would have been when he was a kid, looking at body parts and all that. He was an experimenter. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And in that sense, there is a kind of creepy Dr. Frankenstein, kind of quality to him, right? That creepiness.
Yeah, definitely. That's that he is terrifying in the most calm way too. By the way, he's got that just dead personality of a. He's got the personality of a sponge.
But he's also proud, like Dr. Frankenstein. He's like a modern Prometheus, because he doesn't understand that he doesn't have a right to that power. See what I mean? That's the thing. The arrogance of that.
He understands that. Yeah.
The whole situation is forcing you to take a different look at how I lived my life and what
You
my
never
thoughts
saw
were.
it at the time?
I may have seen it, but I chose to ignore it, bury it, submerge it under the compulsion that was driving me.
It's a morbid interest, obviously.
All right, and what did you start with?
Just roadkills, dogs, possums. In ninth grade, we dissected a baby pig. After we were done with dissection, took the pig's head home and took the flesh off and kept the skull for a while. Why, I don't know.
I mean, he's got to have some idea, right?
I'm not even sure whether I was capable of a real sense of love even back then. Not even sure if I am now.
You don't know that you know how to love, is that what you're saying?
I'm not sure I do. The person who can love, I don't think, would do these things.
Saw this Eurasian guy walking down the street in the afternoon. Asked him if he wanted to make some money, $50. He said yes. For pictures, we went back. He stripped down to his underwear. I took 2 pictures of him, one on the bed and one standing up, I think. And I was drinking some coffee with Irish cream mist in it. And I gave him some and had sleeping pills in it. And he drank some. The whole time he stayed there, maybe an hour at the most. Said he had to be going. I paid him the $50. And he left.
Why did you let him go?
Because I had no knife. I had no intention of injuring him. I just wanted to stay with him and lay with him a while.
Okay, you're still living at Grandma's house
Right.
at this time? Okay.
2 months before I was to go into the work release center. It was closing time at Lacage.
Is it one of your regular bars?
And struck up a conversation with this black guy.
What was his name?
I think his name was Tony. I think. That's what he told me his name was anyway. Tony. He had a friend, a white man with him, and his friend had a car. And then during the car ride, he's very affectionate, apparently very drunk. And we drove to 57th and Lincoln.
But when you did go out that night, though, and you met this guy and you decided that he seemed like a kind of nice guy, what came into your mind at that time that you wanted to ask him back? Did you become fearful in any way that this was going to happen again?
No, I thought that it would just be a regular night. I brought it back. Well, my judgment isn't always so good when I'm drinking, especially when I drink a lot. And we went up to the bedroom.
I mean, is there anybody whose judgment's good when they've been drinking a lot?
Probably not.
And laid around. He was making some comments about getting to be early and he'd have to leave. Went down and made a cup of coffee.
That's another way to me, the excuse kind of.
Yeah.
With
The external-
he fell asleep. And that's when I strangled him.
Did it ever get into your mind at that time that, in fact, you had lost him rather than keeping him?
I suppose that realization did hit me, yeah, but
When?
after they were dead,
How did that feel?
Pause that a minute.
unfulfilling. Felt like a waste.
Josh, pause that 1 second.
Yep.
So now this is an excellent example of where the person who is interviewing someone like this is not stepping into that person's logical world. So they're asking a question like the average person would. if the premise is that you want to keep someone forever, why would you kill them? It's kind of illogical, right? But what they're not understanding is that to somebody like this, the person being dead makes them permanent. That's how you make them permanent. By killing them, they're eating them, they're one with you forever, right? So the person from the outside who doesn't get that is asking a question like, gee, that doesn't make a lot of sense. It's like saying to a gambler, I don't get it. You went there to try to raise money and you put $5,000 in the slot machine. You went home empty. How come you're smiling? Because for that person, the gambling, the dopamine surge is more valuable than the money. There's a logic to it that you don't get if you don't do it. Well, the point is, I think that question showed a complete missing the point of what this man's understanding of permanence. It had nothing to do with the thing being alive. What did he care? This is a man who could relate to a mannequin. Right?
I mean, yeah, he being alive wasn't really he just wanted them to be subservient, he just
Permanent.
obey his commands. And
all right. I just think the question missed the point. It missed the mark. And then you notice it goes right along with it. All of a sudden, Mr. Compassion. Oh, I didn't know what I was, But if they had asked that question the right way, I think he would have perked right up.
I think
what they could have said was, gee, I guess you achieved exactly what it is you were trying to do.
Right.
And I bet those people are inside of you even now that you're sitting here in jail. See, that's what they should have said, but they didn't.
No, and to be fair, well, I say fair, this lady's a lawyer.
Looking face, so
very intelligent. You have to think like a warped. You have to think like a warped person.
Yeah. She wrote a book called "Defending the Devil."
Oh, okay.
You know who that is?
Yes.
Yeah. Cut that off. Put it in a large white barrel. Fill it up with acetone, and that preserved the head.
Why did you do that this time?
Well, just branching out into different variations.
So you kept the genitals and you kept the head. But did you still feel as though you had your companion?
This all is so bizarre sounding now to me.
Do you think you loved Tony?
Yeah, I could say that if I knew how to love, I would have loved him. It was just a matter of trying to preserve what I had left of him.
That was pretty true.
Hoped you'd just dry out and stay looking like you did in life, but it didn't work out that way. Because by that time it was fairly obvious that it didn't look like Tony anymore. It was just all shriveled up.
Okay.
You see this comment that...
But did it still excite you?
You notice this comment, thank you, that C. Taylor made, picking up on his use of the phrase branching out. I appreciate that comment in this kind of Lacanian way, right, where every word can be tied to some unconscious significance. And the truth is, there is a preoccupation with woodenness, right, the woods, forests, whatever. But that idea of being a wooden man, right, that idea. So branching out takes on a creepy meaning when you understand it that way. Understand? You get the point the person's trying to make? And there's a... I'm trying to remember. Let me just see if I have it here. I think I can remember it off the top of my head, but I don't want to say it wrong. Yeah, here. That I remember it. There's a little poem by Stephen Crane, the writer who died very young. Some of you may know him. And he wrote a little poem. I think it goes like this. There was a man with a tongue of wood who essayed to sing, and in truth it was lamentable. But there was one who heard the clip-clapper of his tongue of wood and knew what the man wished to sing, and with that the singer was content. Right? And I think that poem gets right to the heart of this matter. A wooden person that's just trying to find somebody that gets him. And the only way to do that is to make another person into wood. To make a pair, you need two dead people. See?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a fascinating thought. Wow.
Branching out.
No, not as much. The excitement was wearing off. After I got out of the work release center,
I moved out of Grants and into this apartment.
I was looking for an apartment that looked halfway decent. Saw the Oxford apartments and walked in. They had a for rent sign in front. And I moved in May of 90, I think. Yeah. Had the movers bring my TV and the big chest that I had with all my possessions in it.
The things that you had at Grandpa's?
Mm-hmm. In my mind, I had my own place, someplace nice and private, where I could just take someone back, drug them, and then strangle them.
Is this the first person you took pictures of after they were dead?
Yeah. Nickname was Cash D, I think. I don't know his real name.
And what did you use to take the pictures of? You had a camera?
And there was a Polaroid camera.
About how long did it last?
An hour.
Of just taking photographs?
Mm-hmm. It just felt like a waste to me to destroy someone that looked so nice. But by that time, I had no choice. I mean, he was dead. And I had to find some way to dispose of the remains. A day or two later, I went out and bought this large 80-gallon kettle from one of the restaurant supplies.
For that, you went and got a huge barrel, and so you could put the acid in for the bones?
Yeah, it was a trash barrel.
And so you put the bones in there and it would just
Turn into a slush that then could be scooped out into the toilet and flushed down.
And so then what did you do with the skull?
Kept that
Where'd you keep it?
in the closet area.
With the deaf-mute guy.
I wanted to keep him with me, so I gave him the drink with the pills in it, fell asleep, and I wanted to see if I could think of a way to keep him with me without actually, killing him. And so I had a drill at home, and it's going to sound bad.
I mean, this is absolutely brutal. So
It's gonna sound bad.
yeah, it's not only going to sound bad, it is bad.
But should I say it?
Because he cares.
I was asleep.
He really cares. You know those kind of people.
You can-
I wouldn't. God forbid hurt you with my story.
Small hole in his skull to see if I could make it so that he would just sort of be like in a zombie state.
Jeff, where did you get that into?
It came from my own thoughts. Just in my own thinking that I thought maybe it would work, because I didn't want to keep killing people and not having anything left except the skull. I went out and bought a 5-foot square freezer.
Okay, now what made you think that you wanted to do this?
Because I was preparing for more.
All right. So this is the third tape.
There were a few where I tried the drilling technique, and I did the drilling with him too.
You did?
Mm-hmm.
At what point?
Doesn't
before the
the drilling also make you think of wood?
Yes, it does.
Just came or after the officers?
Yeah, before the officers came.
How far down do you think you penetrated with the drill bit?
All the way to the brain.
Ugh.
2 or 3 inches?
Yeah.
And you
Up
went
2 inches.
straight down?
Right.
Nothing came out?
No fluid in any kind?
No fluid that I could see, and no bleeding either.
He was sort of groggy and everything. He wasn't dead or anything, and he talked. And I thought maybe I'd be able to keep him that way.
And what did you put in?
Conorac.
I filled the syringe with muriatic acid.
I used the acid again in a lesser dosage. It was still too much the second time after I injected the second amount in.
The Eurasians, it's just amazing that they were brothers. It's incredible. Can't believe it.
Are you serious, his brother?
Mm-hmm.
Remember what his name was?
No. Sure don't.
About an hour before I had to go to work, I was trying to decide whether to strangle him then or keep him alive during the night. And I chose the latter and misworked and was fired that Sunday. And that was the domino, the first domino that started the whole chain reaction falling. When I was dismembering in the tub, I didn't finish the job in one night. I was in too much of a rush to get it done.
Yeah, it did. It was just to see the inside. No, I almost got
Now that part,
in
Josh,
trouble because
we have to talk about that a moment, because if we concentrated exclusively on this kind of object relations kind of thing we were talking about, where you're internalizing a stable object and all this kind of, or trying to, we would also be missing the point that there was a whole other aspect to this case, which was the paraphilia of being sexually aroused by doing this to people, right? So we've got the original pre-sexual problem of needing stabilization of objects and all that, but then at some point in adolescence, this gets twisted up with sexual arousal, so that you have to picture a person who, as he is butchering a person, is experiencing arousal, right? And is going to copulate with the skull, the socket of the skull, the body parts, a severed phallus, etc. So that you have a person who is also getting sexually turned on by that, right? By the cutting, the mutilation, the power drive, the whole thing, listening to the heartbeat. So we would be missing the point if we didn't see it as both. The search for the permanent object and the sexual gratification from cruelty, power, domination, whatever. Both are necessary. And that is really the essence of a serial killer. It is not just that you kill separated in time by a cooling off period. It's why you do it. That's the problem with the contemporary definition of serial killer. Because the contemporary definition allows you to be a person who kills witnesses after robberies, and you'd be a serial killer. The serial killer should be doing so in the service of abnormal psychological gratification, like getting turned on by it. And this is a true serial killer once we understand that the motive was that mixture, that weird rendering of people a part of you that comes from the weird schizoid autistic part of him. And let me again be clear, we don't mean autistic as in the developmental disorder. We mean in that detached mechanical way some people are, at the level of personality, and the sexualization of violence. Do you see what I mean? How you need both to kind of get him?
Correct.
Yeah, and it's very important. Very important. Now, it looks like we have Seth with us.
Yeah, he was. I think, I don't know if he was on his way out, I think, but
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all the more reason why I felt it was important to go out of my way to emphasize that we don't mean autism.
Yeah.
Right, because
It's a
of course, right. That's a condition that Sebastian was diagnosed with. We don't mean that.
Yeah.
Those are harmless individuals. I mean, some of the most lovely, peaceful people in the world. So,
then you
okay.
have
smell. Apparently, alerted neighbors. Most
Did anybody ever come and inquire?
Yeah, they did.
What happened?
I told them it was just the freezer that went on the blink.
Did you select what you decided to keep? How did you select that?
Just the meatiest looking parts, the parts with the least amount of fat.
So that would have been like the biceps, the thighs,
Right.
the calf.
Mm-hmm.
So you took out the heart and the liver and you preserved that and his thigh.
Mm-hmm.
You also, what did you do with the rest of it then?
I kept about 50 pounds. The rest went in the trash.
How many pounds did you have estimated that you would lose from?
Total about 10.
Man.
So if anybody looked in the freezer, it looked like you just stocked up from the market,
People
right?
did, yeah. So it looked just like the supermarket meat. I froze it for a while, maybe a month,
Yeah.
or not that long, a couple weeks.
Amazing.
Now this stuff, to me, this kind of goes from the sick, sadistic fantasies to, I mean, I would almost go as far as to call somebody like this possessed at some point. I mean, that's just how it's some sort of possession. I don't
I
know.
just think you got it into a habit. Did you ever do something wrong so many times that you didn't even think about it anymore?
Nope.
At first you feel guilty, and then it becomes so matter of fact you don't even think about it. You never had a habit like that?
Yes, of course.
Well, all right. Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I hate to put it in terms like that, but you get numb. At some point, you get so numb to it that he's just like, another body. So I'm gonna refer. And you're talking about a person that's making himself feel alive through violence, and now he's getting numbed out. So you can imagine how he'd have to keep upping the ante to feel something, because he feels that schizoid, empty deadness of the psychopath, right? That inside is wooden.
That's how I feel every time I drink a soda.
I had this pedestal.
I tried not to react to that, but
Black pedestal, and I had a black round top on top of it, and I had this skull set up on top of that around it.
you have the picture of his
Just a remembrance.
drawing?
What's that?
Do you have the picture of the drawing that he did of his shrine?
Let's see.
I'm as an artistic person, I find it very crude and kind of childlike. You know what I mean? But in a weird way, it's more disturbing than if it had been rendered beautifully. But I can send it to you if you want.
Is that on the yellow piece of paper?
I'll send it. Just send you the image, and you can. Yeah, I think it is. It's on legal pad because he was showing everything to the attorney. Maybe
I got it right here. Matter of fact, you can buy them on Amazon. They put it on a T-shirt.
the skull shrine.
Yeah,
I think they were going to be painted with fluorescent, like, you know, to glow, if I remember correctly. Yeah, that's it. Can you enlarge that?
of course.
Yeah, so you see, painted skeletons. And at the top, the those lights that are going to shine down, the painted skulls on the black table. See how primitive the people are? They're not even human. No eyes, no nothing. They're just humanoid shapes, right? And the idea, of course, being that this would be like an altar. Now, this is where we start getting into the grandiose, right? Because I mean, it's almost as if they're worshiping him, or you know, that kind of thing, right? And let's just count them. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there are 10 skulls on the altar. The 2 skeletons brings it to 12. And then I guess we're supposed to think that the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6 shapes that are up there are lights. But it's interesting that there are 12 because that's less victims than he had. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7.
Maybe he didn't keep all of them.
Well, it's just interesting. Well, that's true. Like, you know, for example, the first victim. But it's just kind of curious. And then it says window blue curtains. Boy, he's really thought this out, huh? And you notice, to me as a shrink, what fascinates me, you notice anything that's conspicuously missing? It's like when a kid does a house tree person drawing, right? What is conspicuously missing from this scene. I wonder if anybody in the audience notices it. What's the
Hands.
most basic thing missing from that drawing? There's no floor. There's no floor. There's no ground beneath anything, which tells you there's no support. There's no predictable support beneath him. See? If a little kid drew that, you'd say, I guess you feel like mom and dad don't love you. There's no ground underneath. See? It's like when the roots are missing in a tree drawing. It's not attached to the ground.
Does that bother you?
Well, I'm trying to say it tells you something about feelings of non-support. That everything is just floating. See? There's nothing underneath. I always think that about people that are afraid of flying. That they can't trust. That something's holding them up. That feeling that... Right. This feeling, right. Mm-hmm.
You can get this shirt on Amazon.
Now everybody's going to run and go buy it. I certainly wouldn't. I'm not a fan of things like that.
That's it. When I typed it in, it just came up, and I was like, "My God!"
Where do you buy it? On Dahmer's On?
Yeah, Dahmer's On.
All right.
Dahmer's On. People are weird.
So people, a keepsake of each one of them.
This is the hipster look when he had that hipster look.
My own, yeah.
Dahmer with those phases.
Yeah.
He had that hipster look at one point. You know, with remember he had the glasses that. He looked like everybody on the L train in Williamsburg, you know, with those glasses and the floppy hair, and he had that hipster look at one point, you know.
Yeah, he did.
He'd be very in now.
I had complete control.
It's ironic that somebody like him wants complete control of somebody else, but he has no control over his impulses or his life, for that matter.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah, I've always thought. Because he was always control, and a lot of people. There's a lot of people who want to be in control, like that. You know, of just normal things, yet they can't control themselves most of the time.
Right. People do amazing things to feel a sense of control. It's extraordinary. One of the things I've noticed doing therapy over the years with people is that when there's something that they can't control, they get very, very obsessed over something very insignificant. Like the patient who, I'm making this up completely, but the patient who, for example, is feeling guilty about not being attracted anymore to their significant other and being drawn to someone else, spends the entire therapy session talking about how they absolutely had to find the right color paint for the living room. So they went to 10 stores to find it, and it wasn't right. So they had to paint and repaint and adjust it and fix it and whatever. And you're sitting there going like, this is not about paint. You know, this person is trying to control something to feel in control of something else that they're not ready to talk about, right? So it's a kind of displacement of the need for control to something else. And that's the shame of all of this, right? Is that these victims are the objects of displacement of a feeling that comes from someone else. What I've called in the literature the prototype. Who's the prototype? Who's the real guy that Dahmer is trying to control? Probably his father, I would imagine, right? And then you go out and you project that over and over and over again onto these men, and or perhaps himself. But the idea is that that's a projection, and you're right. He had no sense of control over himself at all. That's an interesting comment. Hypocrisy
at the highest level.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you feel by keeping the skulls, and if you would have actually accomplished this shrine, that you would have felt less lonely, like you were being kept company with the fact that they were there?
I think that must have, been my thinking.
Fascinating little drawing, isn't it?
It's terrifying, to be honest.
I wouldn't show you pictures of the victims or anything, but unless it's when they were alive. But the photos of what he did to the are really horrendous. The snapshot.
They just have a picture of a very dreary gray place.
I was thinking maybe that in prison they'll maybe let me do something with growing some type of plant. I always had an interest in growing plants. I had plants at the
apartment.
I don't understand. I mean, so he's the bringer of life and the taker.
Yeah, that's good. You're starting to sound like me, good Josh. I appreciate that. Starting to think like a shrink. But yes, there is a hypocrisy there, isn't there?
Yeah, there's
that he's the arbitrator, the arbiter. Excuse me, the arbiter of what lives and dies. Exactly.
Yeah, he's in complete control of everything in his environment. This
Well,
is his
play on words there with arbor, the arbiter. Yes, given the tree theme. Yes, but arbiter, I meant to say.
Seems like a waste to destroy somebody who looks so nice
right.
while they were still alive.
Yeah, it did. I felt that it was a waste that I couldn't keep them longer without having to kill them. But I didn't know any other way to make them stay and to control them. And I had no choice.
Having a nice conversation and going on a second date. That might have done it.
Maybe, probably not though. I don't think he was. I don't think his interests really aligned with many others. But he did want to be an arborist.
I felt a great deal of remorse.
Do you? I mean, he says that, but do you? I mean, do you buy that when he says, "If I feel a great deal of remorse"? I think that he did. So, I mean, God,
he was baptized, I think, after he was in jail, right? He went through like baptism and the whole thing.
Yeah, he became a born again Christian.
I mean, look, I can't go inside his soul until, but it's very hard to believe that a psychopathic person authentically experienced remorse. But as I said, he did have that weird way of being able to detach and kind of look at himself from over here, And, there are people like that. They intellectually understand what they did wrong, but they don't feel it in their heart, that
right.
real, where you're like crying your eyes out because you can't believe what you did. Have you ever had a time in your life, and you don't have to really answer, this is rhetorical, but did you ever have a time in your life when you, and I think we all have probably, where you're in bed at night and you're just looking up at the ceiling and you're thinking to yourself, how could I have done that?
Yes.
How could I have done that? What was I thinking? I hate myself for that. Or thinking like I should have done this. I loved that person so much and I didn't tell them and now they're gone forever. I loved that person so much and now they're dead. I should have done more for them. What was I thinking? Right? And, imagine not having that hovering conscience that's eating at you, right? And it must be very peculiar to be inside of yourself without that, right? But you really have to imagine. You have to imagine a person who doesn't sit up at night thinking, what was I thinking about anything? I mean, can you imagine Dahmer sitting in his cell going, boy, what was I thinking? I mean, I just doubt it. I just doubt it. I just think it was so mechanistic, so habitual, so whatever, that you rationally understand that you did something wrong, but I doubt he wept over it. You know what I'm saying? It's hard to believe.
I agree with that.
I doubt it. It's like if someone made you understand that you had a smoking problem or drinking problem, and like if you had a smoking problem and somebody really made you grasp like the cancer risk and the and the other features of it, and you gave it up. You wouldn't sit there and say, oh my God, what was I thinking? I smoked cigarettes. You would regret it intellectually and you wouldn't do it anymore, but you wouldn't have that emotional attachment to what a horrible and that's how it would have been for somebody like this. He would have thought of killing people the way that somebody else thinks about smoking and discarding a cigarette.
Yeah.
It's an object.
Exactly. And Eric, yeah, that's the Stone Phillips interview. And I watched that, preparing for this. And the interview sucked. I didn't like it for some reason. Okay. His dad was right next to him, and I don't know. To me, it felt more. I don't know. It just felt. I didn't like the interview like I liked these tapes, I guess you could say. But I do want. What's that?
That's an interesting guy. Are you opening the lines for calls, by the way?
I haven't. I mean, I can. I want to listen
I always
to.
love those. If you want to listen to something else, let's do that. I have a thing for when people call in, because this very magical thing kind of happens to the show when we open the floodgates like that. And but if you have something else on Dahmer, let's just stick to Dahmer.
What I want to do here is I want to play just a few minutes of Tracy Edwards' testimony.
Yes, I think that's a good idea, and it also brings
because I want you to, because we sit here and we talk about it and we're able to discuss it. You can see the obvious disdain and fear and what this interaction with Dahmer did to this man, and ultimately probably saved a lot of people's lives.
You solemnly swear all the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Please be seated. And sir, would you tell us your name and spell your last name for us?
Tracy Edwards, Edwards.
Mr. Edwards, we're going to ask you to speak up very loudly into the microphone. I would like to know, in what state do you reside at the present time?
Louisiana.
And how old are you, sir?
32.
32? And you are single?
Yes.
And you were in Milwaukee, Wisconsin?
He's in prison for murder. He had a bunch of drug-related issues.
And on July the 22nd, 1991?
Yes.
And at or about that time, on that late afternoon, did you have occasion?
There's a part that I want to point out is when they ask him to point out Jeffrey Dahmer, and you'll see his reaction, and I'll blow it up.
To see a person that you knew at that time or subsequently learned was a fellow by the name of Jeffrey Dahmer?
Yes.
And you know that Mr. Dahmer you're speaking about is the defendant in this case to my right, correct?
Yes.
And that made a record I showed the identification.
Sir, would you indicate where Mr. Dahmer is seated in the courtroom?
It's over there.
Right in the middle between my two associates?
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
The record should reflect
the obvious disdain and fear, probably anger. I mean, he was not happy to even have to address him, or to me, he didn't even point out where he was. They had to clarify, but
the defendant
between my two associates.
No. What's fascinating, Josh, psychologically, is that if we understand that Dahmer secretly wanted everybody to stick around forever, then think of the power that this individual took back, that Edwards took back, by essentially, kind of flicking him off like a flea. Yep. Is it the ultimate, screw you. I won't even look at you, right? And the other thing is, I found myself curious. I've seen this footage before. I've always been interested in well, not always, but I didn't come out of the womb interested in it. But I was interested, since I've seen this interview, this testimony, in the question of whether he knew that the offender's name was Jeffrey Dahmer before he saw it in the newspapers or it was presented to him by law enforcement. In other words, did Jeffrey Dahmer give him the name Jeffrey when he picked him up? Did he use a pseudonym? I was always curious about that, because he says he knows his name is Jeffrey Dahmer, but maybe he knows it later. But what did he think his name was at the time he got picked up by him? I mean, it's hard to believe. Now, if he gave his real name, if he said, my name is Jeff, that tells you that he thought whether or not this guy knew it was of no practical importance. And he might have needed psychologically for the victim to call him by his real name, to feel connected to him. But so I've always been interested in that. That's the kind of thing I think about. But I'm curious to know it, because it would tell you a little bit, right, about the psychology.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know
Mr. Dahmer is
here or not. He might.
Seated in Sir, would you indicate where Mr. Dahmer is seated in the courtroom?
It's over there.
Right in the middle between my two associates?
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
The record should reflect the defendant's been identified.
I mean, you see the disgust, right? It's palpable.
Now, Mr. Edwards, you and I met for the first time last evening,
Yes.
and you came up from Louisiana at my request.
And I feel, I know that he's in prison for murder and stuff. I feel terrible for this man. To this day, I know what he did was wrong, but oh my God.
With your attorney.
Right.
Mr. Syed, S-Y-E-D, Salet, S-A-L-E-T.
That's correct.
And you came up here to testify to the events, as you recall them, that occurred on the late afternoon, early evening, early morning hours of July the 22nd and the morning of July the 23rd, 1991.
That's correct.
So that you know, Mr. Edwards, your name is known to the jury because there has been testimony concerning what happened to you and at the apartment of Mr. Dahmer. Do you understand?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
Where did you know Mr. Dahmer by name prior to that date?
I've seen him a couple of times before then. I didn't know his name personally.
All right. Did you ever talk to him before that date?
Speaking to him, saying hello as he passed by. Yeah.
Just casual, friendly?
Casual, yeah.
You think that
But
maybe
it still doesn't answer still doesn't answer the question I have. But I had forgotten that even got addressed. But it still doesn't answer what name he gave him when he picked him up. But
do you think,
at least we have an answer to some of if he knew who he was before.
You think that he was stalking them?
I think he would have been extremely specific in who he wanted and based on body type. He certainly had a preference for, African-American men or men that were Asian and had a very particular boyish or lithe body type. And, part of me thinks that there was a big part of him that liked kids. So I think the body size and body type for some of the victims might have mattered. And I also think that, he was interested in people that were outsiders that would have, because he would have identified with them. And I think he would have identified with people who said when he did his little interview with them in the bar, they would have had to have said certain things that spiked his interest, like I'm a runaway, nobody cares about me, I'm alone, that kind of thing. As I said earlier, it's partly because he needs that psychologically and partly because he could get away with eliminating a person that nobody would miss. That kind of thing. Right. There was one person he photographed, one person he brought home under the guise of a photography job.
That's him.
Takes the guy home. Was it Edwards that he says he's going to photograph? Because
he did it. He did it to the guy's, the younger one's
the
brother.
14-year-old. I thought he did it too.
He talks about it here a little bit at the opening.
Right, I have to look.
Yeah.
Oh,
where was it?
I think him escaping saved many, many lives, I think.
Oh, this guy would have kept on going. There's no question about it. Yeah.
And he had the strength and the fortitude to fight off this horrific. I mean, when you listen to him, he even talks about, and I don't know if we'll get to that part, but he even talks about how at times his appearance changed, like his facial structure would change, which is crazy talk.
That you saw him in the late afternoon, early morning hours of July the 22nd.
Grand Avenue Mall.
And that was in Milwaukee.
Correct.
Downtown on Wisconsin Avenue.
Wisconsin, correct.
Were you with somebody or were you alone?
A couple of our friends, yeah.
Okay, so the record is absolutely clear. You are not a homosexual, are you?
No, not at all.
Okay. So you were with a couple of your buddies, were you?
That's correct.
And what were you doing?
We was drinking beer, just talking, hanging out,
About 6 o'clock at night, was this?
Yeah, about 6:15, whatever.
Did you have occasion then to see Mr. Dahmer?
Yeah, he approached us eventually and started talking to us. Yeah.
Were you 3 black males?
Yeah, one white, 2 black male.
Okay. So you're friends?
Yeah, my best friend was white, yeah.
When he...
It's very well spoken, too, right? I mean, he's very...
Came up and started talking to you. What is it that Mr. Dahmer said to you?
He said he was just in the city from Chicago. He was taking care of her sick grandmother, I believe, in West Allis. Yeah.
And did he have any further conversation with you and your friends?
Yeah, he was just talking. He said he was a professional photographer. He usually pays people for pictures and stuff like that if anybody was interested in making money at that time.
Yeah, that's
did
right.
They have to pose for pictures?
Yeah.
Did he describe...
That was one of the guys that he used.
Describe the kind of pictures that...
There was more than one.
Yeah, he did it to at least a couple that I've heard of.
You were going to be posing for if you chose to take him up on the offer?
He said nude.
Nude.
Right.
Now, after he said that to you, what did you and your friends do?
They were just talking, discussing it, seeing what was going on,
And what did you end up doing? Did you remain at Grand Avenue or did you go somewhere else?
We proceeded from there. He said he was going to buy all his guys beer, rum, and Coke, watch videos or something like that.
Rum and Coke, did you say?
Yeah, we went to the liquor store on Wisconsin Avenue, 7th and Wisconsin Avenue.
So you walked from Grand...
Yeah, and I take the guy at his word. He says he's not a homosexual. I don't care either way. I understand, that there was, especially then, a stigma about it. He says he's not. But the important part about that is not his sexuality. It's his situation. He needed money. He said he needed money. And Jeffrey took advantage of that by offering him, money. And that's really how he had to lure him, because people didn't really want to hang out with the guy. I mean, it wasn't exactly
Grand Avenue
wasn't exactly like talking to a young Tony Robbins.
down to 7th in Wisconsin?
Yeah, up.
That's too golden. I'm just going to leave that there. Let's let the audience react and quietly let that float.
Trying to think of somebody with a bright personality who inspires. I don't know.
It was so specific. It was so specific that...
Well, okay, it's not like talking to a young Dr. Gary Brucato.
Well, aren't you?
6, 7, something.
Yeah.
Like that. I'm not really sure.
The general area of 6th or 7th in Wisconsin. Right. Was it going to be the three of you and Mr. Dahmer were going to stay together, or was it agreed upon that...
Tony Robbins? What are you talking about? I just, where did you get that from? Anyway.
It's a gift.
One or others of you were going to...
I know.
Go with Mr. Dahmer, or was there no agreement?
They were going to meet up.
Follow him on Instagram. What do you want me to do?
With us eventually later on that evening.
Meet up with who?
Jeffrey at his apartment, but he gave them the wrong address at that time.
Okay, so did you, the three of you and your two friends and Mr. Dahmer, walk down to a liquor store, and what happened when you got to the liquor store?
I saw my brother. We started talking. At this time, Jeff was talking to my other friends.
So you say you saw your brother. He wasn't one of the three that you were with,
no,
then?
No.
You saw him on the street?
Yeah.
Okay, so you had conversation.
Right.
Okay, did anyone go into a liquor store and buy anything?
Mr. Dahmer brought liquor. Yeah.
So he went into
beer.
a liquor store?
Right.
And when he came out, who was still there?
Okay. When he came out, we were all still there.
And then what happened? Tell us what happened then.
Okay, he was talking to them. Then we were going to go up the street. I was going to go home and change and everything at this time. So we proceeded. We caught a cab at the bus station,
Okay. Yeah. Now, what was your plan as you were in front of that liquor store after Mr. Dahmer came out with the liquor and you had been talking to your brother? What was your plan? What were you going to do? You say you were going to go home and change clothes?
Yeah, and eventually I was going to go over there, and maybe check out what he was talking about making the money at that time.
So your interest was in making some money?
Right.
Did he tell you how much you would be paid if you did pose for him?
He said $100 for
You had no idea, did you, that this was for any...
So he offered him $100. He offered the other guy $50, which he actually paid the other guy, right? Which was strange.
Homosexual
No, he didn't come across like that, and he didn't even act like it at that time.
Okay. So now your friends are still there, and you're going to go home and you order a cab for the over at the bus depot. What happens? Tell us what happens.
Okay, and then me and Dahmer, my friends said they're going to go and change and call up the girls, and we'll meet up later on,
Was there an address given as to where you were going?
He gave them some address that wasn't correct.
You later found that out?
Right, from my friends. Yeah.
What happened then? Who else remained?
He's got this all thought out, right? He gives the friends the wrong address, gives him the right address, because he knows what he's going to do. He's isolating this man.
There when this was all transpired, just you and Mr. Dahmer, or you, Mr. Dahmer, and others?
After it all had transpired, it was me and Mr. Dahmer in the cab, leaving.
You met up at about 5:45, 6:15. What time is it now at this time?
It's maybe 6:30 as we get to 26th in Wisconsin.
So you stop at 26th in Wisconsin, and what happens there?
Okay, we get out the cab then, and then he suggested he go to the store and get cigarettes before he went to his apartment.
And after he did that, did you go to his apartment?
Yeah.
What route?
Through the alleys, through the back way. We entered the back.
Was there any discussion as to why you were taking that route?
Said it was safer, people wouldn't bother us or whatever.
I mean, it's just, and Lori Lowe, thank you, Josh, for the membership. Much appreciated. You're very welcome. Love listening to you and Dr. B and Tony Robbins.
At the time that you were walking.
Time out. One question. Do you think that, maybe I get caught up in details or something? Not maybe, I do.
Not you.
That I did since the womb. But my question is, I'm sure when I came out, I was like, what am I doing here? What's this? Oh, I'm sure I did that. I'm sure the minute I was born. But anyway, so just to get it, my question is, the going and getting cigarettes and the fact that it was 6:30 and the whole thing. Do you think that was done as a reflection of how cool and detached Dahmer is? Or do you think that that's all done to orchestrate making the person feel comfortable? Because if you were trying to make a person feel like I'm not going to do anything bad to you, this is just a matter of course, you would do things like that. Oh, you stay right here. I'm going to go get cigarettes. You want anything? Oh, I'll get. Because by doing that, you're creating a sense of like, I don't care that there are witnesses. I'm on, people might have me on camera. It doesn't mean anything. What'd you say?
I didn't even know he smoked.
Well, that's interesting too. But I guess what I'm saying is by doing that, he's savoring it, he's elongating the relationship, keeping them longer, enjoying every minute of it. And I think that for this guy, the intimacy with the person, the amount of time you're with them, getting to know them, it really matters. That's very different than somebody like Bundy. There's a story told that somebody got in a car with him. He forced someone into a car, and then she started talking too much about herself and saying that she had to do this, that, and the other thing the next day, and this is who she was, and what her parents' names were, and whatever. And he got rid of her. He threw her out of the car.
Yeah, I remember that.
For Bundy, her becoming a person was a turnoff. He wanted an object, complete. It's very interesting that for Dahmer, for all his objectification he wanted a weird intimacy with you. He wanted to chat you up and photograph you and kind of save you and forever and whatever. And that's kind of interesting. That loneliness is at the core. That's very different than Bundy, who I think was closer to a reptile that just, wanted the fly to come close so he could eat it. It's very
and the thing is, and you'll hear as they go forward, there are some red flags that Tracy does see and smell and feel, and Dahmer has a excuse or a reason for all of them that makes sense.
Right.
Walking with him towards his apartment.
So I wouldn't surprise me at all if every single aspect of this was thought out. I mean, it was thought out from the sense of he was able to isolate him from his two friends, give them the wrong address for when they would later, show up later. And yeah, he knew what he was doing inside and out.
What was your plans on doing when you got to the apartment?
Really drinking the beer. I wasn't really sure if I was going to pose or not, Yep, I wasn't really sure at that point. Yeah.
You at least were contemplating maybe you would.
Well, yeah, I was going to make up my mind once I got there, whatever,
Were you in need of money?
Yeah, I just started working and the offer sounded good at that time.
Okay. Now, when you got to his apartment, how was he acting?
I feel awful for the guy.
If all he had to do was read about what happens to the other people, and he would know what could have happened to him. That's enough to make you collapse,
Tell us about his...
No, that's...
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it was a fascinating phenomenon that with humans that we can sometimes have a heart attack over what could have been. The knowing what could have been. There's a story, I'm sure you love when I go off on my stories, but there's a story, I think it's an Eastern European fairy tale or something, but not really a fairy tale, a fable, maybe a story, I guess would be the right word for it. And the story is that there's a man crossing a snowy tundra, and he has snow on his mustache and his beard and scarf and eyelids and lashes and the whole thing. And he's shaking, whatever. And he sees that about half a mile in the distance, there's a glow on one of the buildings, on one of the houses. And he thinks maybe that, these are people who could take me in and I won't freeze. So he steels himself and he pushes himself through the snow for half a mile, and he gets there. And it turns out it's a hostel. And he gets in there, they warm him up, they give him some brandy, they give him soup, they cover him up with blankets, whatever. And the next morning, when he's feeling much better, the owner of the hostel says, I have to ask you a question. You came in through this door here. Well, no one ever comes in through there. They come through the front from the road. You came from back there. How did you get here? And the guy says, well, I came across that snowy tundra that behind the house. And the guy says, that's not a snowy tundra. That's the Lake of Kiev. And it's covered in ice. And you very easily could have fallen through the ice, and you would have been in many tens of feet of water, frozen, ice water, and you would have died a horrible death. And when he hears that, a man looks at him kind of funny, and he puts his hand on his heart like that, and he collapses and dies. And that story is told to teach the lesson that sometimes you survive something, but knowing that you did is enough to kill you. Because if you knew what you were facing at the time, you wouldn't have had the strength to do it. See, if this man who was escaping fully grasped that he could have been killed, dissected, eaten, sexualized after death, photographed, can you imagine the fear that would have come over him? He knew little bit of what was going to happen, a little bit, but imagine he had the full idea.
Well, it's funny that you say that. I'll qualify your tangent with another one. The other night I was watching Highway to Heaven. Okay.
Oh, I can't watch that show. It breaks my heart too much.
It's a rough
Landon that he just makes you depressed. Like
it's
Little House. Every time he talks,
I know it's terrible sometimes. But there was his sidekick is Jonathan, and I always forget the other guy's name. Yeah, and a guy was like pointing a gun at him. He shot at him, and he thought he got hit, and then he thought that God had given him what he calls the stuff, right? He calls it the stuff, like where he's,
right.
And the guy keeps shooting at him, and he's like, I got the stuff. I got the, and he's running after the guy, and the guy turns around again, and he keeps firing at him, and finally he gets him subdued and everything. And he's like, are you, and then Michael Landon or Jonathan comes up to him. He's like, are you all right? And he's like, yeah, I'm fine. He's like, I got the stuff. And then he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, the stuff. Like, I got the stuff. And he goes, no, you don't. He's like, really? Like, I could have died. And then he just had this like panic attack where he falls apart. Just like that.
Same thing.
I
used to have a lady in my neighborhood that cracked me up because she would mix up the plots of television shows. And she would say things like, remember that show with Michael Landon where he had the brother Hoss? She's talking about Bonanza. Yeah. Hoss, Highway to Heaven. And I used to say, Hoss was not on Highway to Heaven. Like, you got to picture the cowboy hats, on Highway to Heaven. She used to mix the plots up. It used to crack me up. And the trick was, to get it, you had to understand that the actor was on two different shows. So you had to follow the logic of how you could think these two shows got blended together with that connecting actor. Of course, Don Knotts became the landlord on Three's Company after he was not the sheriff anymore on the Andy Griffith show. It was that kind of thing. And I used to get such a kick out of it because there's something about that thought process that I love. I love the brain, the way people do that. And it was like a game for me. I'd be like, let's see where she could go mixing these shows up. Don't you think that's like a fun game?
Yeah.
I would play it.
I would too.
Let's make a board game.
Tell me about his demeanor. You know what I mean by that, Mr. Edwards?
Yes,
How was
I
he
understand.
acting?
Just like a normal, everyday person, friendly, good conversationalist. He was talking about the military, things of that nature. Yeah.
Had you been in the military?
My father retired in the Air Force, so I've been to several different bases. I was born on an Army base in Fort Carson.
And that's the kind of thing you were talking to
It's
him
like a family thing, so I know a lot about it.
about. Had he been drinking alcohol?
Yeah, I consumed some. He was drinking beer at the time when I first
Well,
met.
the time that you were going to his apartment, was he intoxicated?
No.
Had he been drinking?
Yeah, I've been drinking a couple of beers.
How about you? Were you intoxicated?
No, not at all.
Had you had something to drink?
I sipped maybe a little beer, my friend's beer, that was it.
All right, now you get to the apartment. Do you go in the back way?
Yes, correct.
You went up to the apartment. Tell us what happens when you get up to the apartment. Tell us what you observed, what your senses told you.
Okay, first of all, it seemed like a normal apartment. When we got inside, he turned off burglar alarms. I asked him why. First, it was a foul odor, okay?
Tell us about that. What kind of an odor?
It was just like an odor. I didn't quite know what it was. He told me a sewer pipe had broke and management would take care of it. Yeah.
And did you accept that?
Yes, because
Typical lie that killers tell who have bodies in the house. Gacy, it was the sewer. But I've heard that many times. I could name off the top of my head at least 5 to 10 killers that use.
And by
that.
the way, I love Don Knotts.
worked around that construction.
Like one of the fun. I like when his hair would get messed up on the Andy Griffith show when he was all disheveled and upset about something, and his hair would just be a mess. It was
I'm waiting for
old shows, like I'm 79 years old or something. I don't know why.
I want Steve Buscemi to play him in a biopic.
He'd be really good at it. I mean,
it looks like him. What were we gonna say?
Well, I was raised by old people. By the way, I want to say happy birthday to my grandmother, who will be 81 years young tomorrow.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome. God bless her. 81 years old. Dear Lord. 81. I can't even think about living to be 81. That's amazing. But absolutely amazing. But it's funny because in the movie Ghost World, which was one of my favorites. I love that movie. There's the character Enid gets obsessed with Steve Buscemi. And when she draws him and brings it into school, the teacher thinks it's Don Knotts. And she says, "Why did you paint Don Knotts?" And she says, "I don't know. I just like Don Knotts." Well, I just think that's funny. But they do. They look alike. The sort of bug eyes. Yeah. I think he looks like.
What is the one where he's the fish in the ocean? I always forget it.
Incredible Mr. Limpet.
Yeah, where he's hunting Nazis.
Don Nazis, right? Yeah. But he's the Incredible Mr. Limpet. Yeah.
So I don't know when that movie came out, 50s or 60s, but I remember watching it one time, and the guys that were playing
that movie with the bow tie. Yeah.
The Nazis are have this new heat-seeking missile, and it's got this huge swastika.
Ridiculous thing. It's a typical plot of a movie but that would be funny if somebody mixed up the plots. Right, like mixing that up with Three's Company would be funny.
This is the Andy Griffith show. I didn't know that there were so many Nazi symbols in the show.
Right, exactly. Mixing them up would be preposterous, but that's exactly what this person would do, and I loved it. I loved it so much.
Everywhere you turned, they were overly exaggerating that stuff. I'm mocking them.
Yeah, my favorite. I don't want to go off on that, but God, is it funny? It's like the thing with the belly buttons on angels, but that I went on. But don't get me started. Did you see? I sent you the picture of the image I found of the angel with the belly button.
Yeah, I just ignored it though. I don't want to talk about it.
Well, I didn't make it up. See,
I didn't say you did. I don't want to talk about it. Okay.
When pipes bust, sewer pipes bust, they smell. Okay. So I brought that.
He accepts this as he accepts it.
So you say your first thing he did was notice the odor. He opened the door to the apartment?
Yes.
And you walked in?
Yes.
He turned off something. What did he turn off?
Alarms.
Did you ask him about that?
Yeah, and he said the part of the neighborhood he was in, he was protecting his property, things like that, cameras, VCRs, TVs, things of that nature.
Did you accept that?
Yes, I did.
After getting in the apartment, can you generally describe the apartment, both the apartment that you saw then and the apartment that the other parts of the apartment you saw? Tell the jury what the apartment was like.
It was like normal, pretty decent apartment, had nice things in it. You know, it had certain boxes sitting on the front, neurotic acid boxes. I asked him about it. He said he cleaned bricks with those, you know, which you can use that type of acid to clean bricks. So I brought that also.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you just said. You asked him about some boxes?
Yeah, that were laying in the front living room floor.
And what did he tell you about those?
That he cleaned brick with the neurotic acid.
Okay. Now, was the apartment small, large, medium? Give us the size.
Kind of medium size, yeah.
All right. Now, when you went in there, you went in, as you entered, were you in the living room?
Yes.
And what was the living room? What did you see in there? The boxes you told us about?
The boxes is a couch. There's a fish tank there also. A black lamp. Yeah, there was a little table-like on the left side.
Could you see a refrigerator?
Yeah, I could see the refrigerator on my left.
Was it close to the living room?
Yeah, maybe 8 feet from the living room.
So it was just off the living room?
Right.
Now, did you stay in that room or did you go to another room right away?
We stayed in that room for a while.
And where did you sit, if you did?
Okay, at the end of the sofa like I am now, this is a sofa. I was at this end, and he was at this side.
Referring to the jury, I mean, the witness box, if that were a sofa, he would be at that end. That is the end where he's seated on the witness stand, which would be the part closest to the judge. Is that right?
That's correct.
And where did Mr. Dahmer, what did he do?
He sat like here, maybe a couple feet from me.
Not close to you?
Maybe 2 feet.
You in fear of anything at that time?
Not at all.
Okay, and what did the two of you do?
Okay, he said we were still talking, chatting, you know. He asked me, was I interested in doing the photography? You know, I told him I was still contemplating, so therefore he offered me a beer and a rum and coke mixture at that point.
You think that would have been drugged?
You're fully clothed?
Yes.
Okay, and you're sitting on a couch.
Right.
What's that?
You think that would have been drugged?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty sure that's what he did drug. I think he drugged the rum and coke.
And he talks to you about this posing. You weren't sure you're going to do it.
Right.
How much had you been offered to do the posing?
$100.
Okay. And when he brings you the beer, he brings you rum and coke?
Yeah, he brings the beer first, and then he brings the rum and coke.
How big of a glass?
Maybe that big. Yeah.
About 4 inches high?
About 4 inches, yeah, 3.5, something like that.
Did you ever taste it?
Yeah, I took a few sips.
Was it strong, weak, medium, or just about right?
I'm not a big liquor drinker, so it didn't taste that good to me.
Didn't taste good to you? You don't know if it was strong or not?
Strong or not, no, because I'm like...
What did Mr. Dahmer do? Did he likewise have a drink?
No, I think, yeah, right, a beer, but I don't think he drank all of his drink at that time.
Did he have any rum with him?
I just noticed the beer, right.
Okay. What time are we talking about now that you're sitting on the couch and you get the beer? You got over there about what time and how long after this?
It was about before 7, 6:45, something like that.
So you're sitting on the couch, he brings you a beer and rum and coke, what happens?
Okay, then we just study talking and everything, you know.
General talk?
General talk. Yeah.
What happens?
Yeah, then I was just, I don't know, getting a little agitated maybe, you know, because of the smell and things. And then he threw my conversation off talking about the fish in the fish tank, you know.
Okay, when you start talking about the fish in the fish tank, do you bring that up or does he?
He does.
And what do you do when he does that?
I turn to the right, like the fish tank is here, I'm turning all the way over here.
You turn to your right to look at it?
To look at the fish tank, right.
And when that happens, what happens to you?
All of a sudden a handcuff and a knife is pulled on me. Yeah.
Handcuff is placed on your body? Where?
On my left wrist.
And you see a knife?
Yeah, the knife, yeah.
Now, at that moment, what do you do?
First I feel fear, then I ask him what's going on, you know.
He didn't become overly intoxicated because he didn't like the taste of what he was given, and he thought it was off anyway, and which probably saved him from not being able to escape.
remorse is not necessary, you know.
And we can take a few calls here. 817-799-8214.
Well, I really appreciated emphasizing the voice of the victim because, you know, there's such an obsession with these serial killers. I mean, who cares about them? I mean, you know, there's something about putting the emphasis on the human beings that they, you know, that they kill or that they almost kill that is so much more important. I mean, the only reason we're interested in Dahmer is to prevent another Dahmer. You know what I'm saying? There's no interest in him like he's some kind of fascinating guy because he did this. As a matter of fact, it was deeply pathetic.
And you can Court TV, if you just type in victim Tracy Edwards testifies, you can watch the whole thing. Matter of fact, the entire trial's on Court TV. It gets really graphic, and it's incredibly hard to listen to. And I think that we've had a lot of that tonight already, and so we can move on from that and take some phone calls. What are we going to talk about?
I also think that it's important to emphasize that how do I say this? It's important to understand that when we get into the psychology of these people, it has nothing to do with them being interesting. I just really want to keep driving that home. It just has to do with the idea that if you understand the darkness, you could fight it. It's not that you like the darkness. You know what I'm saying? That's why I always say, and it's going to be, I think, the title of the book I'm doing. I always say that I'm a traveler in the darkness. That's why I think I'm going to call the new book, A Traveler in the Darkness. Right? I'm not in it, the darkness. I just go into it to help bring some light into it, to understand it. And so I hope that's the spirit of which people, and that is why there's this contradiction where we could be talking about something so dark, but we're such lighthearted people.
Right.
You know, that it's not like, you know, it has to do with the idea that that's our buffer against the darkness gobbling it up, you know, because if you don't interdisperse that with, you know, talking about the ropers, it'll wash over you too much. You know what I mean? We have to be human beings. It's normal. It's like a gallows humor or what people develop in an emergency room. When they work in an emergency room, you develop that because it's a defense against getting gobbled up into the darkness. There's a tendency to desire to connect with the other human beings in the room, to joke with them, to play around with them, to have fun, to talk about nostalgic old shows, because the topic is so disturbing, so heavy. And I have to emphasize that because you get people that are like, why are you, you know, it's weird that you're making a joke about. No, we're not. We're trying to put a buffer up so that this darkness doesn't.
It's heavy stuff. And I'm gonna play just a little bit more of this. I'm gonna use the restroom. Be right back, and then we'll take some calls.
Right.
To pull a knife on me.
Are you afraid?
Yes.
Do you have any reason to know why he did that?
None whatsoever.
Did you have any idea at that time it was going to happen?
No.
Tell me about his demeanor at that time when you looked and realized he had a knife and you in a cuff. You were only cuffed on one wrist?
One wrist, yeah.
What was happening to the other part of the handcuff?
Okay, he had it in his hand.
He was holding it?
Holding that in the wrist, yeah.
Where was the knife? In the other hand?
The knife was like he had here. The knife was in his hand. He had it on me like this.
Let the record reflect he was holding the knife in his right hand as he showed it, holding the cuff in his left hand. Is that right? Right. And your left hand is cuffed?
Yeah, right.
Where do you have the knife? What kind of a knife was it?
It was like a military knife, a machete of some type. Yeah, he had it lowered right up under my rib cage, you know. Like
so he
had it somewhere in the back here.
He had it pointed at your rib cage?
Yeah.
Did you feel it? Touch
yeah,
it?
he had it on me. He had it against my body.
What happened? What was going through your mind the moment that happened when you realized you had a knife at your side and a handcuff on your hand? What did you think?
I think, like, you know, what's going on, you know? This guy's so nice, and all of a sudden, you know, it's like he's pulling knives and handcuffs and all on me, you know?
What'd you do? What'd you say to him?
I asked him what the problem was, you know, that it's not necessary to do this, you know?
What'd he say?
He told me at that point if I wouldn't do what he said, he would kill me, yeah.
Now, tell us about his demeanor at the time that you look at him and you say, what's going on? You don't have to do this. What happens to Mr. Dahmer? What's he like?
It's like not the same person that we met at Grand Avenue Mall.
How does he different?
His face structure seemed different. You know, his body structure is like it wasn't him anymore, you know? It's like it was a totally different guy there.
So he told you if you didn't do what he told you to do, he'd hurt you.
He'd hurt me.
What'd you do? What happened? Tell us what happened step by step as best you can remember.
And then all of a sudden he kind of calms down, you know? And then he said he has a key in the bedroom, so we proceed to the bedroom.
The key to the handcuffs?
Right.
So you believed he was going to take them off?
Yeah. At that point, I had to go along with this guy, you know? And then if I had to find out, so I walked back there with him. He kind of guides me back there, you know?
Guides you back with the cuff and the knife?
Yeah, right.
And you go into the bedroom?
Right.
What do you see in the bedroom?
A big, about 50, 60 gallon drum barrel, whatever.
Do you ever see a 50, 60 drum barrel in anybody's bedroom before?
Not at all.
Do you have any idea? Did you ask him what it was?
No. At that point, I asked no questions at that time. Yeah.
Was there a bed in that room?
Yes.
How was the bed? Was it made, unmade? What did
it was unmade.
What did you see on the bed, if anything?
Something like a stain or whatever, yeah, on the bed.
What did you think it was?
At that point in time, I wasn't sure.
What did you do when you got in the bedroom as he's holding on to the cuff and the knife? What did you do?
Studied us talking, trying to be friends with him, you know.
Did you remain standing? Did you sit down?
Oh, he made me sit down at that point. We both sit on the bed.
Was it at the foot of the bed, side of the bed, head of the bed?
Maybe halfway between.
Did that room have a TV set in it?
Yes.
Was there anything going on the TV?
Yeah, the Exorcist movies was playing at that time.
There was an Exorcist movie on?
Yeah.
Do you know which one of them?
The name, I'm not sure. I think it's 3. I'm not sure which one.
So there was a movie. Did you know it to be part of television or VCR?
VCR, normally that's not on regular television, so I thought it was VCR.
You knew there was a movie showing?
Right.
Did you see him put it on, or was it on?
No. When we first got into the apartment, he went through the back to the back bedroom. Maybe he put it on then, I'm not sure.
Okay. And then what happened? You're both sitting on the bed?
Yes.
Are you still in handcuffs?
Yes.
Is he holding the handcuff?
Right.
Do you still have the knife?
Right.
Is it pointed at your side, as you've told us before?
Right.
You trying to be cool?
Very much so.
You're not fighting with him?
No.
What's your intention? What are you planning on doing?
Getting away. I was contemplating on at the point jumping out the window. Yep. I was basically talking with this person, trying to let him know I was his friend. Yeah.
As you were sitting there on the bed, when he had you by the handcuff and a knife at your side, at that time, which would have been maybe 7 o'clock?
Something like that.
What impression was made upon your mind by the conduct, action, manner, expression, and conversation that you observed of Mr. Dahmer?
His frame of mind is what you want to know, right? Okay, he acted, at times he would go through like different changes with me, you know?
Tell us about that.
1 minute he's like nice, then he was telling he didn't want people to leave him or abandon him, things of this nature, you know?
Which goes right back to the beginning of the show.
Okay. And notice what he's doing? How Dahmer is swiveling in his chair like doesn't look remorseful. He looks almost like he's reimagining it or bored or distracting himself. He's kind of doing a little sway like a little kid might do. He doesn't look like he gives a crap, does he? Does he look to you like he's heartbroken?
No, he looks disgusting. Just sitting there like a little kid. Caller, go ahead. You're on the air.
Oh.
You there? Sorry.
Speak, spirit, speak. It's that seance thing again.
Sometimes it takes
What are they calling by string and can?
maybe. You never know. You never tell. Okay. Caller, go ahead. You're on the air. Hello.
Hello.
What's going
Your
on?
call is very important to us. Please hang on the line. We'll be
Put me on hold.
Sounds like a hold music. Your call is very important to us. If you'd like to speak to an agent, wait until the end of time.
Movie phone.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Well, what did you think about him as a person? What impression was made on your mind of this fella that you're dealing with
I don't know where they left.
here?
They put me on hold and left.
Yeah, that at times he wasn't himself, and then at times he was like a nice guy, you know. He would come and go different times, you know, throughout the whole time. Then he would like sit, being quiet at times, watching a movie, wanting me to watch the movie, you know, and just doing little chanting sounds, you know.
Did you observe him watching the movie and how he would react to the movie?
Right, he would like just start rocking back and forth when he, you know, certain parts of the movie or whatever.
You have to say, what did he say, Madam?
It was like chanting in certain times and rocking back and forth, right?
Tell us about his chanting. What was that all about?
I'm not even sure, sir, but it was just like, I can't tell you the words. I couldn't understand what he was saying at that time.
Can you mimic him?
Isn't it interesting, Josh, that he says that when he was doing this, that he was rocking?
Yeah.
We were observing him doing when he probably was reimagining it in his head there in court. It almost makes you wonder if he's stimming, if it's a stimulate, you know, a kind of a way of coping with anxiety or sensation, or if he's getting aroused. We don't know what it means, but it's very interesting. Very interesting. He's doing it in the room. And chanting. I mean, very strange.
Sounded?
It was like a slow slur, like some of that nature, some close like that, I'm not sure.
Did it keep on for a period of time?
Off and on throughout the ordeal.
And how about the movement back and forth? How was that being effectuated?
Just like back and forth, he would do it every now and then. You know?
Just as you are rocking in your chair?
Like this.
And chanting?
And chanting.
Was there any parts of the movie that was going on that you saw that he said anything about?
It was like the part about the preacher that used to be a preacher that had got possessed, and that it would seem like he was like interested in that part. That part had his attention more than anything. You know?
Well, tell us about what you mean by that. What impressions were made upon your mind when this was going on as to had his attention? How did he appear to you?
It appeared like it was like he wanted to mimic it or be like that part, you know, being demonized or whatever in that nature.
I'm sorry, I missed you.
Yeah, like he wanted that type of movie, that part, certain parts of that part interested him, you know. It was like he changed with it at times. Then he would get more aggressive, try to get me to handcuff myself, both hands, and he's told me it made him feel more dominant.
Okay, did you and he move off of the bed at any time?
Yes, he wanted me to lay flat down, stomach down on the floor at that time.
Did you at any time go to the bathroom, use the washroom, prior to the time that he asked you to lay down on the floor?
No.
All right, tell us what happened how did that happen that he told you to lay down on the floor?
You know, he told me to lay down, face down, put both of my hands behind my back because he changed again at that point, like he got more aggressive at that time.
Okay, now, but tell us, did he still have the knife out?
Yes, he still had the knife.
And what did you do?
Okay, I kind of like laid on my sides for some reason. I guess God told me not to lay flat down or let this person handcuff me, so I didn't.
So you were trying to stop that from happening, but you got down on the floor.
Right.
What did he do?
He kind of laid across me, put his head across my chest at that point.
What was he doing with his head?
Pardon me?
What did it appear to you he was doing with his head? What was he trying to do?
Like he was listening to my heart, because at a point he told me he was going to eat my heart at that point.
He said he was going to eat your heart?
Yes, that's correct.
Did he still have the knife?
I mean, and then you can just see the obvious distress. Him reliving this is unfathomable.
Well,
Where was the knife?
The person made the point that the lawyer asked good questions. The truth is, I think it did a very nice job of two things. One, getting into all the sensory spheres, because when people remember things in a true way, they remember everything: the smell, the sight, the taste, the feel, the sound, so that you get a sense of really trying to bring it to life and show that it's true, right? But the second thing is that it shows an insight that for these kind of offenders, all these little details matter, that every little drop of this is important for understanding the fantasy, right down to what did he find interesting in the movie. I mean, you might as well say, did he pick this movie on purpose? Was it part of the turn on for him? Did he need to put this movie on as a, to get himself whipped up to do what he was going to do later? Was he trying to make you feel a certain way? Did he say comments to you? Did it, during it, etc. Those things are all really important, And then, of course, there was the interesting question about how many people, do you ever walk into a bedroom and see a big drum like that in the middle of the room? Well, I mean, certainly what that suggests is you're never leaving that room.
Correct.
You've seen something now that, you can't see. So now you're not getting out of there alive. And this guy started to get a sense of it, obviously, because he said that God, made him understand not to lay a certain way, which I thought was a really powerful thing to say, because you could see how scared.
Look, who knows what's going on in a divine intervention, or it's just him praying, for his safety. We gotta hold on one second. We got a call.
Person call back.
I don't know. Probably not. They put me on hold, so. Let's see.
Scary stuff, and you could see in this guy's eyes, the.
Call your name and where are you calling from?
Hello?
Hello?
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Can, yeah. Go ahead.
All right. My name is Ellie. I'm calling from the Netherlands.
Oh, hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, I think there's a delay.
Probably. You're calling from the Netherlands.
Yes, everything gets kind of repeated a little. I think that's what they mean by double Dutch. We heard you. It repeats.
Yeah, yes. Am I repeating?
Well, I think you don't know that we hear you.
Mobile.
Why don't you just say the question, and then we'll hear the question, and we'll answer it on the other side.
Oh yeah, well, I just wanted to share a case we had here in the Netherlands. Am I still double?
Nope.
No. Now you're clear.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we had in the Netherlands. I don't know if you heard of this woman. Her name is Anna Faber, and was a beautiful girl. And on an autumn day, she went cycling, as we do here in the Netherlands,
mm-hmm.
and she disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And we are a small country, so everybody in the Netherlands was worried where she was. And well, we looked, and God, I'm very nervous. Suddenly,
please don't be.
It's a story that moved me. It's a story that moved me deeply.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, don't be nervous at all. There's no pressure here. We're working with you. It's all good.
Yeah. So what happened was that while she was cycling on an autumn day, she met a man who molested and raped and killed her.
Oh.
And he buried her. And what moved me was when they found her a few days later, they found the perpetrator very, very quick. The father had to, how you call it? I had to, what's the name? That you go to the morgue and you have to say, "This is my daughter."
Yeah.
To identify the body. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Identify her.
Yeah.
What the father said moved me. He wanted to see the body, and he sat down sit down with his daughter, and he looked at every bruise, every cut, every blue spot, and he tried to let it sink in.
Of course.
And with that thought, try to be with her while his daughter was attacked, and he was not there to protect her.
Yeah, right. You feel, I could see, yeah, right.
I was so deeply moved by how he shared that moment, that the love a father can have for his daughter. I just wanted to share.
Was it very powerful? Yeah, but Josh, what do you think? I mean, that's such a sad, terrible story.
Anytime, you know, a father or parent has to identify their child at the morgue, it's just something that you would never, ever want to have to do. Did they find the killer?
Oh, yes. They found him. And the horrible thing was that this man attacked 2 girls earlier.
Yeah.
I raped them. But as we have a big problem here in the Netherlands, and that is we don't have a justice system like you have in the States. People go to prison for half a year or a year. So he molested 2 girls, and he got out.
Terrible.
Weirdly enough, after a few years, he should never have been let out of prison. Yeah, I'm very, but with more cases, I'm upset. The people here in the Netherlands do not go to prison as long as in the US.
You know, we have a member of the Cold Case Foundation who is Dutch, Jolanda van der Graaf, and she was an investigative reporter who I believe is now becoming a private investigator. And you know, I often, you know, she interviews me for Veronica magazine in the Netherlands. Do you know it? Veronica magazine. Yeah.
Yeah,
and,
I know.
Yeah, so she interviewed me for that. You know, about murder. I'm going to ask her if she knows about this case. You know, if it's something she's written about. Because it sounds like everyone would know it, right? Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to talk to her about it. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, on a father case. Yeah, he also wrote a book. I read his book about the whole process of that case. It's a horrible case.
What's the killer's name?
Also because we are such a small country.
All right. What's the killer's name? Do you know the murderer's name?
Oh. Yeah, I will. I have to look it up. Just a moment. I know it.
You're not. Are you talking about a case? Are you talking about a case from a few years ago, like only in like 2 or 3 years ago, or do you mean a long time ago? Is this a recent?
2017.
2017. Okay, because I was.
2017.
Yeah. I got to see if I have it in my database. I'd be curious.
I've almost got the name. What was his name?
Oh, wait a minute. I have it here. I actually have it in my database. I have it. Yeah. Anna Faber, right? Isn't that the last name?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the girl. There's a photo of her last photo, where she looks very miserable because she's about to go cycling and it's raining and she's doing the peace sign.
Oh,
That
I
is the
see.
last photo of
Yeah,
her.
I see the case here. She was.
And an hour later, she was. Yeah, she was murdered.
Very interesting. She's a blonde woman, about 25. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also because she comes from a typical Dutch family, a loving family, and she could be my sister. And also we cycle, and through the forest. Everybody cycles, and then suddenly she disappears.
Well, in what I have in my notes here, what I have in my notes, and forgive me, sometimes I don't have many sources when something like this happens, was that there's no full name for the accused. It just says, I just have Michael P. Apparently the last name wasn't circulated or something.
Yeah.
And what I have is that the motive.
Michael P. Yeah.
That's it. And what I have is that the motive was supposedly that it was supposed to be a sexual assault, but she was screaming. And so he killed her to eliminate the person screaming. And, which is consistent with why a lot of people that murder victims of SA do so, to eliminate a witness or avoid detection or so forth. And I don't know much else about it. I added that, to the database probably at some point when I saw an article somewhere. But it is very unusual for there to be a murder like that in your country. You could probably count on two hands how many of them there have been, and crimes like that in a decade. So and so I'm not surprised I have it in there but I don't have much info on it. If I'm correct, she was in her 20s. And she was somebody that we picked because she was young and isolated and recycling in the same way that we see in the United States a lot of these attacks on young women that are jogging, for example, that are isolated in a forested area or whatever. And so it's a terrible story. Did he get convicted? I don't have in my record if there was a conviction.
Yeah, she said he did.
He got convicted. I'd like to add that.
Yeah, but he got out pretty quick.
He got convicted.
Good.
Yeah, with the first case, and now again he's now with the first because he attacked two girls earlier, and now he attacked Anna Faber. He is convicted for at least 20 years, something like that. But
I'll tell you something. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I didn't hear you until this. I was going to say that in my database, what I recorded, and I don't know if this is a little TMI, but I recorded that when they reconstructed his day that he murdered her, that he was found to have put around a screwdriver, something like a bolt, some kind of, a knife, pliers, whatever, that he was hiding along the path. So you get the sense of a person who had set out to act out some terrible fantasy. See, that's, and the idea being that maybe the goal was to torture the victim, and then she starts screaming, understandably, and he eliminates her. But the idea is, it sounds like the whole thing was this kind of perverse torture fantasy, and then somebody comes along the path where he's hidden this stuff, which certainly argues against a crime of opportunity. I mean, he set things up along the way that were going to be used so that, you really get the sense of a horrendous offense. And, I think it's beautiful that you're drawing attention to her. I'm sure most of us have not heard of this crime. And she's I remember, now that I'm typing this, there's a picture of her where she's just sort of smiling or whatever, and she's a very pretty young woman with very sad eyes, that sort of is looking at the camera in a very deep way, and it's really heartbreaking. Am I remembering?
The last photo.
Light eyes and kind of looking very sadly at the camera. Is Is that the one? Long blonde hair.
Yeah, but that's the but is that where she also does the peace sign with her fingers? Because that's the last photo, and the other photos she's very happy.
Yeah, that's
I think she was a very happy young woman.
Yeah, that's a terrible story, but you know, the hiding of the instrument, and you know, what else could it have been for? I mean, if it wasn't for some kind of torture fantasy or something. So I really appreciate your calling about that. And I am going to talk to Yolanda about if she has that case and her records, and if it's been written about for that magazine, perhaps she'd like to talk about it. But thank you for drawing attention to it. I'm sure it means a lot to the victim. Yeah.
I assume she read his book. Your father wrote a book, a beautiful book about.
That I didn't know. What's the name of the book? I'd like to look. Is it in Dutch only or English? Does it exist in English?
It's in Dutch.
Oh.
I don't think so.
Maybe I'll get it on something where it could be translated. Does it exist where, like, you know, it can be
or you get it and you
right.
Yeah, and you use Google Translate.
Well, maybe, but I don't know the whole book. But well, or maybe I'll just have to learn Dutch.
We appreciate your phone call very much. We got
kindness in your soul, you know, when you speak your.
Okay, I'm gonna listen.
All right, thank you so much for calling.
Yeah. That was very powerful.
Het is heel makkelijk om te leren.
What did I hear?
I don't know.
What did I hear? What did she say? Was she speaking something?
I was speaking Dutch. I was saying it's very easy to learn.
Oh. Well, thank you. I heard it.
Thank you for taking my call.
All right.
You're so welcome. That was, you know, that was.
No, it's very easy.
What's that?
That's a disturbing case. I had it in there. You know, everything's in my database somewhere, because anytime there's a murder, I throw it in there. But that case, the torture element, you know, that must have been in the fantasy with those instruments hidden on the path is really disturbing stuff.
Stuff, yeah. That's and
pliers. I mean, I haven't heard of that since Lawrence Bittaker.
Lawrence Bittaker.
Yeah, the guy in the van that used to go around. He would record himself.
Yeah.
Okay.
516, you're on the air. Where are you calling from?
Josh, Dr. D, this is Lori Lowe. How are you both?
What's happening? How are you?
Lori has called us before,
I'm
right?
good.
I don't know.
No. I wrote you, but I wrote both of you. But no, I'm the one that just got in trouble in the chat tonight. Yeah. I didn't
I've heard your voice before, but maybe not.
No, that's Karen Baz. They both have accents.
Where are you from, Lori?
I knew it. That's why I wasn't.
Well,
I'm right from where you are.
Where?
That's why I wasn't going to call. I knew you were going to do this.
The way you say it, you make me think you're outside. What do you mean you're right from where I am? Should I go outside? Should I get a helmet? What do you mean you're right from where I am? What neighborhood are you in?
Okay, I'm originally from Brooklyn and Park Slope, and then I was out in Long Island. But we you know, like when you start in Manhattan, and then as it gets, like my family's all from Manhattan, and then as the neighborhoods got bad, my mom moved us out, and we ended up in Long Beach. So we were there and now I'm in Florida. But
I you know how I know where you're from? Because you said we lived in Long Island. Not on Long Island, in it.
Well,
but when only people from there say in Long Island, like they buried you, you know. So you lived in Long Island, but I don't know why we say that, but we do.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that fun? You ever notice that we say?
We do.
Yeah, it cracks me up. But anyway,
I'm going to do a speaker because
family reunion.
Oh, now I can hear you better.
There you go.
Yeah, well, that's why I laugh so much when he's on, because I'm like, he's like from the neighborhood. That's how we talk. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, I can talk like you. I can talk just like that. I grew up talking just like that. I just hide it.
And then he became Fraser Crane.
But I can talk exactly like you're talking right now. If I want to.
No, I don't even. You want to know something? It's so funny because I moved down to Florida, and they go, "What part of New York are you from?" As soon as I walk, either the way I dress or the way I walk, I don't say a word. And they go, "What part of New York are you from?" I go, "Listen." But they go like this, "What part of New York are you from?" And they do one of those. New material.
I can't go to other states like that with ease because I stand out like an undertaker. I can't. I remember one time I went to a college interview, and they made me go to a bar in Arizona, and they were talking about sports and whatever. I was wearing a suit because I think when you go to an interview, you wear a suit. They were interviewing me. They had baseball caps.
Absolutely.
Talking about who's your favorite team. And I'm sitting there like I look like a ghoul. And I'm talking with this New York accent, whatever. And everybody's looking at me like, what are you doing here? I look like an exotic crow in the middle of this.
An aeroplane that you're treated like this.
And I'm like, and you know what happens when I get angry, when I get upset, the accent comes out. You know what I mean? That's what happens. So, speaking very calmly. Right. You got to see me when it comes out. It's hilarious.
So funny.
Yeah, like one time I don't remember where I was.
Relate.
Well, yeah, one time I don't remember where I was. I was speaking, like I'm speaking now, whatever. And then the guy, I was eating at one of those stands in the street. And then I got annoyed because they were overcharging for the and I'm like from a place where you don't pull out leg, you know what I mean? So I said $2.50 for a freaking hot dog. Get out of here! And it comes out, and then everybody starts laughing. But it starts to come out of you, because Brooklynese. Anyway, that is hilarious. I love it.
Because you turn around and you say, you turn around and you say, is this hot dog made of gold? Is it going to call my name? Like, I don't understand why you're charging this.
What is this hot dog going to do for me?
$2.50 for a hot dog? Are you kidding me?
You want to know? Yeah, but you know what? The funny thing is that I don't even say anything down here. I don't. And they go, we could tell by the way you walk. We could. And then if you go to a doctor, wait, I don't know. This is.
We can tell by the way you walk and the way you talk.
The way you walk.
It's true. And I have a cup of coffee.
I love it.
You say,
I love your accent.
I'm going to a doctor. Thank you.
I really do.
Thank you. I knew I was going to get ripped apart.
Not at all.
I knew I was going to get ripped apart.
Funniest thing, one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life was they did a school play when I was in Brooklyn, and they performed Macbeth. Okay. And every kid had this accent. Okay. To this day, when I think about it, my side splits. Imagine that, by the twitching of my thumb, something wicked this way comes. I still to this day I laugh about it. Tomorrow creeps in his petty pace. I mean, Macbeth with a Brooklyn accent. My God, did that crack me up? And I still to this day, it's one of my favorite memories. This is so ridiculous. She should have died half after.
It's true.
Anyway,
I go to a doctor's office down here. They say, why are you getting so dressed up? I said, what are you talking about? I'm going to the doctor. And they go, why are you so dressed up?
Right,
I'm like, dressed up? Why? Because I showered and did my hair? This is how I go.
Mind your business, you Momo.
Can you imagine? No, I just can't imagine.
I come from people that are very, that are like that too. Yeah. Oh my God. You got to see my face when I see people that, there's people who go out in pajamas with the sliders and the socks and the thing. Yeah, I don't understand that.
Look in the mirror today.
You have to be immaculate when you leave the house. You know what I'm saying? So I look at that and I'm like, What is this? You're too, you just rolled out of bed. But I appreciate the comfort. But
I go, who dressed you? Yeah,
You're probably a
in my
Boston
house.
Red
I'm in my
Sox fan.
in the house you do it.
I'm not.
You don't go to the
No, I'm not.
supermarket like that. They go to the supermarket like that.
No. I
could
know.
never-
I can't. I don't go get my mail that way.
Yeah, you stop.
That was my hair.
I don't go get my mail.
You stop making fun of it.
Well, you got to realize I'm a hairdresser too. I had a salon ago. So
Forget about it. Oh,
forget about it.
I'm a hairdresser. Anyway, all right, we're done. So what's the question?
it's coming out now, right
Okay.
now. Did you hear that? We're done.
I know.
Did you hear him?
I know. I did.
Yeah,
What
he is.
I did.
You.
I did.
You just said we're
All
done.
right. Listen.
You
We're
sounded
done.
like Polly Walnuts. We're done.
Remember when
No,
they tell them that there's a ghost watch?
Done.
Oh my God. Anyway.
No,
enough.
this is serious. So
Okay.
for real.
All right.
This is
Do
serious.
you remember? Yeah, no, it is serious. Do you remember Leah Calaga? She was a carriage rider, on the horse and buggy in Central Park, and she got murdered.
Oh
Do
yeah,
you
I
remember?
remember.
It was like in
I think I have it
2000.
here in the list.
Okay, that's a cold case right now. That's a family friend, and
Oh really?
her mom. Yes, and I said,
What I got here.
oh my God. Well, that's why I wasn't going to call him, because we were talking about Jeffrey Dahmer. I said, I'm not going to call it on him. But when I heard the woman from the Netherlands say about it, I said, oh, I got on hold. I hung up and I dialed. Dr. B, you got to look into this.
Well,
is
somebody
still
from
a
the
cold
family,
case.
somebody from the family can submit to the Cold Case Foundation that they'd like it looked at. But you have to understand.
That's what I'm doing.
Petition. Not only does somebody have to petition, but I think that would be NYPD. Of course, NYPD would have to be willing to let the Cold Case Foundation in on information they have. They would have to be willing to share, images from the crime, camera footage, and often people don't want
I'm
that.
going to tell you what happened.
Right.
No, they do. Let me tell you the reason why it went cold, and I could say it now because oh God, I'm getting choked up. I could say it now because her mom. All right, we all knew. We were all living in Long Beach when this happened. Okay, and my husband passed away exactly 1 year later. So it was just, thank you. So we were just like, it was first Leah and then my husband, and they were both young. And we were like, oh my God. So, but Leah's mom, Sissy, she was so, we were all saying, it's the boyfriend. And the mother was jeopardizing the police investigation because she loved the boyfriend and she did not want to believe it. And the whole family and friends were like, Sissy, please let the police do their investigation. No, it's not him. And we kept saying, oh, but come on. She just got into that apartment. Nobody had a key. How she was cleaning the apartment to get it ready to move in. He was the only one in there. What are you doing? And then he disappeared. And we were like, you see? So the mother actually got cancer and passed away by sitting at that computer and never leaving. I mean, for years, that woman never left the house again. She was determined. She was real smart, and she knew how to research. She knew how to do all that stuff. So she was digging. And the police got upset, and they just stopped. They just stopped looking. And because every time she would tip him off. Like they would say, we're going to call this one in, and she would tip him off. She would say, no, you're going down the wrong path. That's not him. Don't go there. It's not him. And we would all try to keep her quiet and say, no, sissy, let them do their job. Let them do it. But she would not.
Right.
Now
but let's just be clear. You're not talking about somebody who was formally accused. You're talking about something where people had that gut impression.
They just wanted to interrogate him.
This individual. Okay, because it's important that we're clear that you're not talking about somebody that was accused formally as a suspect, right?
No,
Right.
they just wanted to question him. And
Right.
she would be like, no. And she would give tips to them, to whoever, because she felt like she knew Leah and all her friends, and she just loved this kid, and everything, it just like anything else, like you go, oh, well, this seems like...
How do you spell Leah's last name? How do you spell Leah's last name? Because
Paraphilia.
Yeah, spell it for me.
Tagli, Tagla, Faria, maybe. Taglafaria. Yeah, I think.
I remember this case, and I'm trying to remember why I can't find it in my database. And the thing is, it's bothering me because I know I have it. Wait a minute.
Leah is just Leah. It's not like we would spell it with the A at the end. The first name is Leah.
Yeah. She was a driver of a hansom cab, right?
Yes, that's her. And her cousin is Denise Ford, the legislator in Long Beach. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I think I remember. I think I remember this story. In fact, if I remember correctly, it was in Woodside, like where Woodside and Roosevelt Avenue crossed into each other, right?
And Howard Beach, something like in Queens, like around in there. Yeah,
I'm gonna find it. I remember this because I have a very strange ability to remember stuff after I've had it in front of my face, and it's bothering me that I can't remember. I think I think I remember that case. Tagliaferri, I think, is the name.
Her anniversary is coming up. Say that again?
The anniversary is what day? That'll help me find it in my records. So what's the date of it?
The anniversary is April 20-something, I believe. I had a stroke, so I can't remember.
I'm sorry to hear that. I really am. I found it. Yeah, here it is. I had it in my database. It is here.
How long ago did you have a stroke?
Yeah, it is April.
Tell April 6th.
7 years ago.
Tell us about that.
I knew it was in April. Oh, I do.
Yeah, but tell me about that. Your the stroke that you had.
Well, when my husband passed away, I begged God. He passed. My mom I was taking care of my mom. She was getting ready. She had lung cancer, and I was taking care of her, and we were prepping and preparing ourselves for her. And then one day, my husband was only 49, and he woke up out of nowhere. And he was, we were in a band together, and we did a gig the night before. Oh. And then we woke up, and he was an electrician for Local 3. And for many years, he's really from Manhattan. I mean, he's a real city guy. And he woke up and he was yellow. And I said, "Oh, Lou, you gotta go to the hospital." He said, "I'm going to work." And I said, No. So he put glasses on. So then I called up his job, and I asked his boss, I said, "Louie's working with his sunglasses on, isn't he?" And he said, yeah. I said, "I need you to go and take his sunglasses off and look at him, but don't tell him I told you." He said, "All right." And he did, and the boss said, "Well, you gotta go. We gotta take you to the hospital. You either got liver failure or kidney failure." And they put him in, and they called me up. And by the time he was first in Maimonides in Brooklyn, and by the time I got there, the doctor said, "He's got days to live. He's got cancer." And I was totally devastated. So
terrible things.
It was so. I mean,
yeah.
Oh my God! I can't even. I devastated.
I found it. I found it in my records, and what I have in my record is that she was found with a scarf around her neck. She was strangled with a scarf in her apartment in Woodside.
Yeah,
right.
It was they made it look.
Yeah.
They Woodside, and they put like powder. Now we don't know if the mother was hiding it, or we don't know if the mother was hiding the idea, or she just didn't want to tell anybody. They made it look like she was like doing drugs, like coke or whatever, and we don't know. Like the mom was very. May she rest in peace. So now she knows the answers. So we're all right. But I can't let this go. Like it kills me. And now that our anniversary is coming, I get all worked up over it. But I don't. I have a phone number and a connection of the family, and I would step right back because they could give the details. They could give the truth. They could give, she only has one sister, and and she's young. She's younger than me. I mean, she's young. She's got to be like maybe in her 40s.
Right.
So they would talk with whoever and go about the process, but they would give the details that are better than what the friends know and what the outside knows.
Well, I think it's beautiful that you're drawing attention to the case, because this is one of these tragedies that happens and gets gobbled up, in time, and it's a horrendous story, and the thing is, of course, strangulation with one's own scarf. I mean, my God, and in the intimacy of one's home.
And it was in the bathroom. She was cleaning the bathroom. Yeah, she was cleaning her bath. She was doing the bathroom to move in.
Well,
it was horrible.
Part of that story, I'm sure. But given how long ago it was, it might be possible that law enforcement would be interested in sharing the information. Just if the family wants, they can petition the foundation.
Yeah.
But the family has to do that. And if they do, that's something I would probably look at with, people like Chris McDonough and everything. And so now that having been said, Josh, I think we've gone a little long. I think
we're about out of time.
But I think this.
That's not your fault.
No, we don't mean you. We mean the whole show. I love your call, and you're a very strong woman. I really appreciate your how tough and I can hear how.
I'm glad you called.
You're such a tough cookie, So I appreciate that, and I hope you didn't mind us teasing you.
My life story.
Yeah, and I hope you didn't mind.
No, it feels like home. I don't care. I laugh. I laugh at everything. I cried enough in my life. I'm living the rest out laughing.
I'm with you.
I'm going to die laughing. I promise.
I'm with you. I feel the same way.
And check both of. Yes, I know, Josh. And check both of your emails and your spams, because I wrote you both and I CC'd you both after a conversation in another stream that we had about my brother, and you wanted me to talk to my brother, and I wrote you the whole thing, and then I actually had him here for my birthday. So, and he asked me to. But
was it one of those ones where I told you should make up with somebody?
Yeah.
Or what? And you did it. And you did it.
I'm going to tell you the story. Well, I did it. I didn't. I accepted what I couldn't bring to him, what I remember him doing, but I accepted by him in 15 years coming to my home. I believed that was all I was going to get, and I accepted it. And I just, what was I going to do? Because I didn't want him to pass. without, and he is passing, but I didn't want him to pass without me even trying. And I'm a very spiritual girl. And my priest told me in Long Beach, he said, listen, your family is very toxic. I know them all. He said, and you're too good. Stop being the doormat. He said, however, so I'm going to give you permission to move on. However, if the doorbell rings, you have to open it. And I said, okay, that's a deal. I moved. I came down to Florida with me and my 2 dogs with no destination, no family, no nothing. Sandy took my house down. I was like, I lived on the beach in Long Beach. I was like, what am I doing? I had to start over. And I got in the car and I came down to Florida. And with real no destination. The doorbell rang.
Is he going to stay in touch with you? Is he going to stay in touch with you?
I invited him here. He's only an hour away. It's 15 years I haven't seen him, and he's only an hour from me. And I invited him to Super Bowl Sunday, and he said, how am I going to do that? I'm on oxygen. I said, and we do things, don't take this long, but we laugh through our heartaches. So I said, the way you're sucking air on the oxygen in your house, suck the air in my house. What's the difference?
You know what? That's a good point.
And
that's cute, yeah. Right.
I said it. I said, what are you going to do? Lay there and wait to die? Why don't you just come here and die? I watched them before. What's the difference? And he's like, I guess you're right. So we'll see. I invited him to Christmas. I invited him to New Year's.
Yeah, well,
he didn't show for those, but he
that
called.
Was I think that was very wise.
I have to.
Very wise.
And you can both watch the Buffalo Bills lose together in the Super Bowl.
Very wise. You put the superb owl in Super Bowl by doing that, and I think that was very superb and wise. So
friggin'
yes, beautiful.
Well, I hope you call in again. I really appreciate it, and you're a great caller.
All right, I'll call in the beginning next time.
Oh, not a problem. Not a problem
at all. Thank you for the membership, Josh.
Thank you, and thank you.
Stay well, both of you. God bless.
God bless you too.
God bless
you for
both
calling.
of you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
We did our good deed, Josh. We earned our wings.
I think so. I love when we open up the lines. It's great.
I think it's great.
One of my favorite
parts is ready to strangle us most of the time, but that's okay.
I'm still listening.
I thought I hung up.
Oh my God.
Well, yeah, of course everybody's listening.
I try to get off the call with my relatives. All right, okay, all right. I'll talk to you later. All right, bye.
Oh.
Anyway, all right. Well, I think this was extremely interesting. You know,
I had a great time.
I think talking about Dahmer was great. I don't know what we want to talk about next.
We'll figure it out. We'll do another one. I mean, I like these, and we'll, we can.
Well, you learned a lot too. So did I.
Yeah, and we can also just do call-ins as well. It's always fun, and BB, thank you so much for your super sticker. I very much appreciate it. If there is somebody in the chat that can put Dr. Gary's link to his book on Amazon, and also you can get Dr. Gary's book, The New Evil, at any bookstore near you. And we absolutely appreciate it. This has been a 3.5-hour show. We always do 3-hour shows. I mean, that's kind of common for us. It's not a big deal. I appreciate it, but I'm telling you, Macho, I can hear him through the wall. And he's a beast. He's an absolute beast. Like, I think he's part gorilla.
He's cute. He's a cute dog.
He's all right.
Cute.
He bit my ear.
Showed us as a little baby. It was like adorable.
No, that's Otis. That's the one, the underwear thief.
Adorable.
Wow. I have another word for it, but.
So in other words, the dog is dying for you to go take a walk with it or something.
He wants to go outside. I don't let him go out because he's been sprayed by a skunk 8 times since he's lived here. And he's only been here about 2.5 years, but he's been sprayed 8 different times. So much so that when he gets sprayed by a skunk in the backyard now, that I won't let him out. He just runs right into the house, into the shower. Like, hose me off, dude. Seriously.
I love it.
He's an idiot. But he also thinks I'm an idiot.
But it's 1:43 here where you are. It's not that late, right?
Yeah, but the skunks are out.
And you're well out of the area of the fire, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I think our hearts definitely have to go out to.
Oh God! But I have family down there and friends, and they haven't been affected. Some of them had to evacuate, and they haven't lost their. But good Lord, just terrible.
Oh, yeah.
But
I've
anyway.
had people affected personally, and it's
awful.
Wrong.
Eric, thank you so much for the fat.
So,
All right,
I think our hearts go out to those people, definitely. I think we 100%. Have to end on that note. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Gary. Talk to you soon. Let me see here. Well, I appreciate you guys hanging out, and always appreciate Dr. Gary showing up and doing his thing. Not many people like Dr. Gary, share their time the way that he does, and we really appreciate it. He's not clever when he gets sprayed. That's not clever. The clever part is he knows that I have to clean him up. He thinks that's funny. Guys, have a good night. Mods, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody that liked, watched, respectful. You guys are great. Appreciate it. Night, Jovi. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.